Hey guys, welcome back. This is a what if of Luffy eating the Hito no Mi, model Asura, instead of the Gomu no Mi. The family of D is scattered around the world. Names have ascended from their clan to be legendary and hold power throughout time. But what if someone of the head family were to unite them and bring them from the shadows? What if it was time to show the world that they're still strong by their name and clan? This is an OP, wild, smarter, different DF Luffy. Harem and crossover elements. Before we start, only 23.1% of people who watches these videos are actually subscribed, so please hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you will never miss a video. Now let's start this part. Chapter 11, Light Training, and Logtown. Luffy along with his crew have been traveling for about a few hours now since they found out about what Luffy did along with his bounty. So now, Luffy was standing at the front of the ship looking out at the ocean before him as Lily came up with him noticing. So he decided to speak first as he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" asks Luffy. Lily doesn't respond and comes to stand next to him and speak. "It's nothing, just thinking about the adventure laid before us," says Lily. "Oh, yeah, that is something to think about even though I've planned it. Things could still go the other way," says Luffy with a thoughtful look as Lily nods, so Luffy continued. "You seem to want to speak about something else." "What is it?" asks Luffy, curious by her face. "It's just I'm remembering how we first met," says Lily with a smile. "Yeah, you almost killed me at your original height," says Luffy with a chuckle, with Lily giggling a bit as well. "I definitely did," says Lily, giggling as she calmed down to continue. "Then after our fight, you helped me save my father from being imprisoned by the Marines, knowing that it could cost you your spot in Cipher Pole and Sword," says Lily with a thoughtful and fond smile while looking at Luffy. "I'd do it again if I had a do-over, you know that," says Luffy with a smile looking at her. The two just look at each other for a while, no one interrupting or even knew what was happening. So the two were gliding towards each other in a trance until their lips connected in a spark of electricity for the both of them. Luffy wrapped his hands around her waist and Lily wrapped her arms around his shoulders. The kiss was soft, gentle, and intimate as they were like this for a minute. So, Luffy separated his lips from hers and put his forehead to hers and spoke. "I know it's been a few years, but it feels like we never separated for the past couple of days," says Luffy in a gentle voice, content right now just holding her in his arms. "I feel the same." "It feels like we never did," says Lily with a content look on her face, but remembers something and speaks again. "Luffy, can you promise me something?" asks Lily, continuing by asking her question. Luffy looks at her in the eyes and speaks. "What would it be?" asks Luffy, curious on what he's promising. "That no matter what, you always be safe in a fight. I know you have a tendency of getting a bit battle drunk, but always keep a level head to return unharmed, or most likely. I can't ask for you to be unharmed fully, but just try," says Lily, hugging into his chest to enjoy the warmth. Luffy could understand where she was coming from with this, as she really cared for him deeply, knowing she wouldn't let any harm befall him if she could help it. So he just hugged back with a smile as he spoke to answer her. "You know I always bounce back, but I promise I'll try," says Luffy, hugging her. The two stayed like this for a couple of moments before breaking the hug. As the two separate, Luffy spoke once more. "Come on, I need to tell the crew what we're gonna be doing from here on out into the Grand Line and what they should grab while in Logtown," says Luffy with a smile. "Right," says Lily, smiling back as they walk toward the main deck. Main deck. The two walk back to the middle of the ship to get the crew's attention for what he has to say, along with what to grab in Logtown as a suggestion. So Usopp right now is cleaning the cannons on deck, Nami and Nojiko were relaxing in lawn chairs enjoying the weather, while Zoro and Ju were sparring, and Sanji was in the kitchen. Luffy then stopped near the middle of the main deck to get their attention. "All right, everyone. Gather around," says Luffy, shouting out to the crew. This causes all of them to stop what they were doing and make their way over towards Luffy to see what he wanted. Soon after, they were all gathered up as Luffy stood before them. "What is it, Luffy?" asks Sanji, wondering what it could be that he had to call them all there for. When Sanji asked that, Luffy used his inventory ability to bring out money in large pouches. So, from here Luffy decided to speak again. "Now, Sanji, to answer your question, we're only a few days from Logtown. Which means we need to restock and grab essential gear before entering the Grand Line, but also it's a part of what I'll be teaching you for the training that comes in the future. So Usopp, check inventory for ammunition of our cannons. Sanji, go into the kitchen and make a list of everything you are going to need for the kitchen along with extra provisions. For the next few days, I'll hash out what you should grab when we get there, but for now along with me, Lily, and Ju will be training you all," says Luffy, giving orders and informing his crew. "What kind of training?" asks Zoro, curious. "Hockey," says Ju, informing them. "And what's that?" "Considering I'm just hearing about hockey," says Usopp, wanting to know more about it. "Alright, so let's begin. Zoro, I only told you the general pieces of what it is, but you were able to awaken the rare form in your fight with Mihawk, but the other kinds you don't know how to use yet along with the one that you awakened, says Luffy, informing him. Yeah, the old man told me briefly what haki was at a time, says Sanji, as this didn't come as a surprise to Luffy because he expected much from the great cook, but Sanji continued a bit further. I get the bits and pieces of it, but it's been a while since I last talked to him about it, says Sanji as Luffy nodded. Knowing there were reports in the cipher pull files that said Redfoot was able to make it to the New World. Though it was never confirmed, Sanji seemed to be confirming a bit of Zeph's knowledge of the Grand Line, so Sanji continued further. It's said to be something that can rival the power of devil fruit users in the Grand Line, says Sanji, scaring Usopp and Nami a bit at that. Yes, but not everyone can use haki or knows haki in the Grand Line. It's rare to encounter them in Paradise, but in the New World everyone knows haki. Actually, it's a requirement for a rank in the Marines, says Luffy, informing them. Most of them got confused at what he said about Paradise and the New World. So Nojiko decided to ask. Luffy, what is Paradise and the New World? What are you talking about? Asks Nojiko, wanting an answer to that, as the others nodded, not knowing either. The Grand Line is split into two halves. The first part we'll be entering is called Paradise, while the second half is called the New World. That's where me and Lily are from. Well, where I was born in technical terms, but I was raised in East Blue, says Luffy, giving them an understanding while surprising them all as he continued. The reason it's called by these names is because the Grand Line is separated into two halves separated by the Red Line, says Luffy, explaining it. Then why is the first half called Paradise? We've all heard stories of the Grand Line, and none even come close to Paradise, says Usopp, earning nods from them all except Ju and Lily. It's called Paradise because the first half is a cakewalk compared to the New World, which is a living hell, where everyone knows haki and the bounties of pirates reach over 1 billion berry, along with stronger crews that live up to those bounties they received, says Luffy, shocking them all about the bounties of people in that part of the Grand Line as he continued. Hell, it's how I got the scars here and along my front torso, says Luffy, as they saw them on the left side of his jaw and the scars across his torso. So don't worry, I'll train you as best as I can before that. Now back to haki, Ju, asks Luffy for Ju to take it from there. Haki is a mysterious power that is found in every living being in the world. It is not that different from the typical senses. However, most people do not notice it or fail to awaken it, says Ju, informing the crew. So, everyone can learn haki. That's pretty awesome, says Usopp. Luffy decided to take it from there and speak. There are two main types of haki available to anyone along with some subcategories, but if given the right training they can achieve the main two along with the subcategories, says Luffy, looking around and seeing them all pay attention as he continued. The first is observation haki. It grants the user a sixth sense of the world around them. It's the most common usage of this haki that allows the user to sense the presence of others. When fully mastered, this ability would allow the user to see others even if they are concealed from view or too far to see naturally. When viewed this way, the user can't actually see the person with any physical characteristics, but rather recognizes them by their aura, with also being able to sense the strength of others, says Luffy, letting them know the possibilities as he begins the final part. The final piece of observation haki is that if honed to a certain degree they can see a bit into the future, says Luffy with a grin as those who didn't know widened their eyes. Wait, seeing into the future? Asks Sanji in a tone of disbelief. Luffy nods and speaks again. Yes, I fought the main who could do this along with me, being able to do it at an early age without even realizing it, says Luffy, surprising them more as he continued. I can only see about 4 minutes or so into the future, but keep it to a few seconds or minute, unless it's serious. This type of haki works best if the user is in a calm state. This type is also best for shooting targets at a great and far distance, so you would be good for it, Usopp, says Luffy, making Usopp get stars in his eyes as Ju takes over again. The next type is armament haki, says Ju as Luffy brought his arm up for it to be coated in a purple aura that soon stopped to make the arm coated in black. A form of haki that allows the user to use their spirit to create, in essence, an invisible armor around themselves, providing potentially incredible offensive and defensive capabilities. Notably, this form of haki can be used to injure devil fruit users that are otherwise immune to certain kinds of physical harm, mainly Logia users, says Ju as he turned to Zoro and spoke. You can use them on swords or weapons of choice to make your attacks more powerful, but can also be used in advanced stages, says Ju, making Zoro grin as he continued. The one thing you should know about armament haki is that it can run out in a fight if overused. But can injure people like me, as my devil fruit turns me into water, essentially making me a Logia-type devil fruit user, and if I were hit with this haki, then I would be able to be hurt or injured, says Ju, informing them further as he explained it. And, for the aura, refer to EP 892 in One Piece. So it's helpful against devil fruit users, considering we'll see more of them in the Grand Line the further we go, says Nami, seeing their point. Yes, those are the main two with subcategories everyone could awaken, says Luffy, causing everyone to nod, but Nami asks a question. Main two? Subcategories? There's more, asks Nami. Luffy nodded and decided to explain. There is one more that only certain people can awaken. It's an extremely rare type called Conqueror's Haki or the Conqueror's Spirit. It's a rare form of Haki that cannot be attained through training. Only one in several million people have this ability. This type of Haki allows the user to exert their willpower over others. I have it, and Zoro used this unconsciously during his fight with Mihawk, says Luffy, making them all finally get it as Zoro made sure to try and use it again. It is said that whoever possesses this type of Haki has the qualities of a king, says Luffy as Lily took over from there. Conqueror's Haki is considered an extremely dangerous threat and a highly valuable asset by powerful groups such as the Marine Admirals and the Yonkos. This particular Haki, when someone uses it, they can make a group of people pass out in foam at the mouth, although those with strong wills can resist the effects of it, says Lily as they all nodded. It's also able to do other things like how I used Conqueror's Shadow to make multiple shadow versions of myself, says Luffy as they remember he did that back at Kokoyashi Village. As for the other forms, they're called elemental Haki, like mine for example. I can use all the 5 major affinities due to training, but my born affinity is ice, though I will explain later, says Luffy, coating his left arm in ice to show it off. The next one is Tool Creation Haki, where a person can manifest malleable Haki in the color of their will. Once you've gotten the basics, you'll be able to use it in time, says Luffy as he makes red swords from Haki to then make them disappear. So first, we'll teach you all observation Haki, before we teach you armament, says Ju, walking forward a bit. Yes, it would be the best for you all to learn, so that you can predict an enemy's movements in a fight before we start to strengthen your attacks, along with getting your Demon Slayer marks to manifest down the line, as it would help you considering Zoro has his already, says Luffy. Now get into pairs. Nami and Nojiko, Usopp with Lily as your partner, and Zoro with Sanji, says Ju as he pulls out white cloth. Now, one of you out of your pair will be blindfolded while the other is not. The other person who isn't will hit you in the head with a stick, says Ju, handing out blindfolded while Luffy handed out the sticks. Now the main objective is to dodge the incoming attack while the blindfold is on. Clear your mind, and try to expand your senses but also remain calm, try to feel everything around you, says Luffy as he gives Ju a nod for him to start the training. Soon everyone started on a different part of the ship and begin the training. One thing was clear to Luffy, and that was Ju is a slave driver when it comes to Haki training or any type of training. So the next few days would be extreme for all of them, while not for Lily considering she had most of this down like the two. 3 days later. It's been 3 days since the Haki training started along with reading Luffy's bounty. So now, the entire crew was currently standing at the front of the ship to look at the island they were approaching with speed. For the past few days, Ju was driving all of them into the ground as their training was a success but would still need great work as they could now predict where most of the blows were coming from to dodge it. Luffy, Ju, and Lily expected much considering they're just starting out, so 3 days isn't much but a start. Luffy and Ju both know that Haki can grow when your life is in danger or facing a stronger Haki user. So while everyone else can dodge, Usopp told Ju that he can see a faint outline of people for which he could tell was a person's aura. So, Luffy and Ju explained at length for him to how this could be used to pick out targets. So after all of this, Nojiko was the first to speak about the island in front of them. So this is it, huh? Asks Nojiko, seeing it. Luffy looked over to her and saw that she was looking ahead, and he turned back and spoke. Yes, that's it. The town of the beginning and the end, says Luffy as he turns to everyone and speaks again. Alright. Gather around, says Luffy, yelling out. The crew did as asked of them, with Luffy using Asura's inventory to bring out bags of money for each of them, as certain ones had a tag on it for what to get, as Luffy observed a bit of their fighting style. Luffy threw each of them their bag of money and Sanji decided to speak for the group. What's this for, Luffy? Asks Sanji. That's 2 million berries in each pouch. Each of you will get whatever you need to grab for upgrades, replacement, or essentials for the Grand Line, well except for Zoro as I gave him 8 million, says Luffy as he turned to Zoro. Buy yourself 2 new swords and buy Nojiko a weapon as well. Whatever's left just save it for later, says Luffy as Zoro nodded. Now Nami, I want you to buy more charting supplies because we'll never know when you run out. Ju, buy more supplies to make repairs for the ship just in case. Usopp, get more ammunition for the cannons. Nojiko and Lily, you're with Nami, buy whatever you like. Sanji as usual, go into the town and get our necessary provisions along with what you need in the kitchen. Now that's it for now, so let's be quick because I don't want to spend too much time here, says Luffy giving out the orders. Aye, Captain, says everyone in unison as Luffy nodded. Be warned that people in this town will try to sell you knockoff equipment, so don't fall for it. The second and final thing is that there is a marine captain here by the name of Smoker. A lot of pirates have been stopped from going into the Grand Line because of him and none have never left the island, says Luffy, putting them on edge a bit as he spoke once more. None of you worry about him considering I'm his target for the incident that occurred in Mariewa. He doesn't know anything about you guys except me, Ju, and the other generals. So I suggest getting your business done and heading back to the ship as soon as possible, says Luffy, giving them advice. So as they sailed closer, they decided to dock near the end of the island. Everyone got off and began making their way towards the town. While they walked, Luffy kept his eyes out on guard along with Ju for any marines who may have spotted them entering the island, considering that the two were great threats in their own way. But to both their surprise, they saw no one. So the two figured that with a bounty like theirs, and the other generals, that the marines would do anything and everything to stop them from re-entering the Grand Line, but it seemed that even though they sent more marines to the island, that they had more guarding the entrance to it. Considering Luffy used his observation haki to see. Luffy wasn't complaining and neither was Ju. After all, they didn't want to cause trouble just yet when they're so close to the Grand Line. So as they made it to the entrance of the main shopping district, Luffy turned to his crew and spoke. Okay, I'll see you guys in a few, be quick in getting your things. I'm going to go look around for a bit as I kill time and then get what I need to get done, says Luffy, walking away. The others get moving with what they need to do, so they can get off the island. Somewhere in Lode Town. At a small building that has the insignia with marines on it. A marine is receiving something through a paper machine as he sees it and becomes shocked, getting out of his chair. So he runs off to inform the captain of the island, opening the door to find a room full of smoke as he spoke out. Captain Smoker. A message from headquarters, says the marine as he was saluting, and continued. I've just received word that Celestial Dragon Killer Monkey D. Luffy and his pirate crew are heading to Lode Town from East Blue. Headquarters says his intention is to re-enter the Grand Line, says the marine to his captain known as Smoker. What's his bounty? Considering this is a former marine and he's just starting out, says Smoker, waiting on the response, thinking he could handle this and be done with it. 295 million berries, sir, says the marine, reporting. This made Smoker's pile of rocks he was stacking collapse as he looked over to his subordinate like he was crazy. Are you kidding? Asks Smoker with wide eyes. No sir, says the marine. Smoker got up and opened the window to let it air out and then spoke. Tell the men around the island to start patrolling the entire place looking for him. I'll get ready, says Smoker as he was getting ready with the marine saluting and left to inform the others. With Luffy. Luffy's objective was to go to the execution platform where Gol Roger died, but as he was walking he did notice he was going to need better gear for the Grand Line. I might as well make a final upgrade to my clothing while we're here, thought Luffy while walking. He was currently on Main Street looking for a place that was very good in finding outfits and whatever else he needed. After walking for a few more minutes, he finally stopped before one store that caught his eye and walked in. So as he entered, he saw a collection of clothing that also had weapons as well, coats of all designs with different color fabrics. So as Luffy was looking around, a young lady in her 20s with black hair at the register spoke. What can I help you with? Asks the young woman in a kind tone with a smile. I was wondering if you could help modify my outfit along with adding some things. As for the old clothing I'll keep, says Luffy to the young woman. Let me guess, you're a pirate? Asks the young woman with a smile. Yes I am, says Luffy, returning the smile. It's been a while since I could help someone entering the Grand Line, says the young woman, reminiscing on the past a bit as she spoke once more. So what can I help you with in terms of your outfit? Asks the young woman. Well, says Luffy, beginning to speak. 30 minutes later. While Luffy waited, he asked her questions about her store and the island, with her telling him that since Smoker had come, no pirate ever being able to leave once they stepped foot on the island, as they were captured and executed. Luffy told her that most of the people in boats now claim to be pirates, but if they can't beat the man in charge here then they wouldn't survive the Grand Line, with her smiling at that. She soon finished the outfit for Luffy as he went to put it on. So Luffy now wore his new outfit. He still wore the tessellated headband along with his necklaces with his Hanafuda earrings, but around his left wrist was a red wrist bead and a black wrist bead for the moon mark on his left hand, while on the right hand was a white wrist bead with a red wrist bead to go with it, along with a gold dragon bracelet. As for his hands, had more rings. For his right middle finger, the ring had a black background with the kanji for wrath, Ikari, as the one on his index finger had a crimson-red background with the kanji for calamity, Saigai, but on the middle finger of his left hand was a ring with a red background and the kanji for freedom, Jiu, but on his left index finger was a ring for the kanji for greed, Danyoku, as these represented his powers and devil fruit, but freedom represented his personality. So for the clothes he wore, he still had his purple and black patterned Haori with a strap to keep his sword mask on the shoulder, but he now had a tight but free red tank top, considering it was his favorite color. He had tighter black pants but loose to move freely in with his black sash that had the white fur along the edges with an apron-like white cloth over his pants, bearing black diamond shapes and a red X design. So for footwear and socks it was the same, with the armor pieces to grapple to hard surfaces. Luffy had his katanas strapped to his waist, he had his tanto strapped to the back of his waist. He kept his tomahawks strapped to the sides on his bottom leg holsters. For his newest additions he had another Walker .36 caliber percussion revolver strapped to his right hip with tool compartment for throwing weapons. So when Luffy was done he went over and paid for his gear and spoke before leaving.
"Thank you, ma'am," says Luffy walking away to the exit. "Wait, what's your name?" asks the young woman.
"It's Monkey D. Luffy," says Luffy while looking at her.
"Ah, I see.
That's why you look so familiar. You're the rookie who has that high bounty on your head," says the young woman as Luffy nods. "You know you've been making the Marines around here on edge and extremely nervous," says the young woman as Luffy laughs a bit. "I guess I would, considering all the people I've faced so far aren't really that strong," says Luffy, making her giggle a bit.
"Well, I should get going."
"Thank you," says Luffy, officially leaving as she watched.
With Luffy. Luffy was currently heading to the execution platform now. He stopped in a bar called the Gold Roger and decided to have a drink and talk with the old man who owned it. As Luffy heard stories from the man and told him he would be sailing into the Grand Line to do the same. The two of them had a drink to that as Luffy paid and left to walk for what he came for. So, now he was on Main Street walking and was hearing people behind him in hushed tones talking about him due to recognizing him from the wanted posters. Luffy ignored it all, and continued walking while taking in the sights of the place. So while walking he could sense he was being followed by Marines who were sticking to the shadows while some in the open went to inform Smoker. Luffy was counting on his crew being done with their business soon because it would almost be about time for them to leave the island and head straight for the Grand Line. So now, he spotted the execution platform not long after he arrived in the main plaza, and decided to disassemble himself in red cubes to be at the top of the platform and stared out at the view. So, this is what the king of the pirates saw before he died, huh? Very impressive, says Luffy to himself while looking out. He could see a crowd gathering around the base of the platform, but also took notice of Ju not far from the platform with the others looking at him in confusion. Luffy could see that the Marines were encircling the plaza to create a perimeter. None of them were powerful, and that told Luffy that Smoker had yet to arrive, but he did feel another presence. "Hey! Get down from there immediately," says a man in police uniform yelling out to Luffy. "And why exactly?" asks Luffy, playing dumb. "You are standing on the execution platform that belongs to the world government. Now get down from there right now," says the man. Luffy just sighed and spoke. "I think I'll stay up here for a bit. I'm already comfortable," says Luffy, making people gasp while Joe found it amusing. The man who was doing his job was about to yell something again, but before he could was hit in the back of the head by a giant club wielded by a woman that Luffy recognized by her aura through hockey but was very confused about her appearance. "It's been a while, Luffy. I've been looking for you," says the woman as she swung the club over her shoulder. "Yay? Well, keep looking because I'll be gone out of your reach," says Luffy in a playful tone. "How rude. You mean to tell me you of all people wouldn't ask why I'm looking for you?" asks the woman. "Yep, considering I know who you are." "Alvida," says Luffy, deciding to play the game with a smirk. "I have to say you're correct, Luffy. I ate the sub no mi," says Alvida, causing Luffy to understand now as she continued. "Now no attack you throw at me could hit, as they just slip right off," says Alvida, proud as she continued. "And as you can see, because I ate the fruit, I lost my freckles and some weight," says Alvida as both Ju and Luffy had their thoughts. "Luffy told me she was fat as a whale. This was proven when I saw the bounty poster." "What is with this woman?" thought Ju, exasperated with a sweat drop. "I think you lost more than that," thought Luffy as he had a blank look with a sweat drop. So while he had this thought to himself, Luffy's observation haki alerted him of a threat a few seconds ahead but would be coming from above him. So instead of allowing it to happen, Luffy disassembled into red cubes to appear away so that his attacker would appear in front of him, crashing to the platform. So when he did this, the attacker did land with neck shackles that Luffy could tell were sea prism stone. So he was already on guard as the man looked familiar to him, so when he stood up fully, it showed that it was Buggy. So Buggy was surprised that he dodged the surprise attack effectively but smirked all the same as he spoke. "So, how's Roronoa Zoro doing?" asks Buggy as Luffy had a serious look but puzzled by the question. "He's doing fine." "The same can't be said for you," says Luffy as that confused Buggy. What dash begins Buggy but find himself attacked by Luffy, who used his devil fruit to coat his arm in a metallic metal from his devil fruit, and punch Buggy's face, sending him off the platform. Luffy now saw that the others who wore hoods with him were actually his crew, courtesy of them taking off the hoods. "Idiots can't learn a simple lesson that they can't kill me," says Luffy, looking down on them as this was already starting to bore him. So as Luffy saw this and sighed a bit but sensed something else from the marine auras in the perimeter they created and had a thought. "So, they want me and Buggy to fight each other first. By tiring and wearing ourselves out we wouldn't be able to escape or even evade capture. Clever plan, Smoker, but not clever enough because you're going to have to do better than that against me," thought Luffy with a smirk as Buggy began to yell at him from the ground. "You are going to pay for this, Straw Hat. for defeating me and my crew. I'll exact vengeance, damn it, says Buggy, yelling from his position in the plaza.
This made the citizens of Logtown at the plaza look at this scene with a look of confusion. They found the interaction a bit strange between Buggy and the young man at the top of the platform. That strangeness didn't last long until someone in the crowd shouted out something, getting their attention.
Wait! That's the guy. The one with a 295 million berry bounty on his head.
The dishonored pillar general of wrath and celestial killer, Straw Hat Luffy, says the man, recognizing him with fear in his voice. People now looked at Luffy, who had his arms folded and hair blowing in the wind as it looked like a storm was coming. It sunk into them as the crowd started to panic, wondering where the Marines stationed on the island were. From here, Luffy decided to chuckle a bit as he heard thunder. Luffy smirked a bit while walking toward the edge and stood at said edge with his arms out wide and yelled for everyone to hear.
I am Monkey D. Luffy,
the man who will bring a clan from darkness and the man who is going to become king of the pirates. Know me and know my declaration, says Luffy, finishing up with a grin that covered his eyes with Smoker seeing some sort of flashback from his past from this as the strongest and biggest lightning bolt came down as if from the heavens to strike the platform violently. As it came down, Luffy smiled as he had no fear of death. The lightning hit the platform as it sent the entire thing to the ground as they were beyond shocked by what they heard.
What? Says one citizen, now even more shocked. Bring a clan from darkness, asks another citizen to themselves, very confused. And become king of the pirates?
Just saying that in this town of all places is crazy, says another citizen. No, it's suicide at best, says another citizen.
So that's what you're doing, Luffy? Informing the others it's time to come out of hiding?
Very clever, to do it in the place where our morale was destroyed, thought Ju with eyes a bit wide. So as that happened, Luffy climbed from the wreckage as a hole opened from the dark sky and a beam of sunlight from the hole shined through and down onto Luffy, who was now standing in the wreckage laughing a bit as he spoke.
I'm still alive. That's nice, says Luffy with a grin.
Everyone had their mouths hanging with jaws dropped at this scene.
Zoro and Sanji came in moments earlier to hear the declaration and see what just happened and now had widened eyes and jaws dropped along with the others from the crew who came to see what the commotion was. With Smoker.
Smoker and the Marines with him were beyond shocked, and a bit frightened by what they were staring at. Knowing the past actions of this rookie that shocked the world years before. Smoker's cigars even fell out of his mouth as he stared at this boy before him. Luffy just stood there with a grin as he looked at the sky for a bit. To Smoker, the beam of light came down to shin upon Luffy, as it reminded him of when the Pirate King was executed years before. It was like a spotlight from the heavens shining down on Luffy right after he made his declaration here of all places. It was as though he were the chosen one, or chosen by the will of many, or some entity, chosen by the heavens to become the next king of the pirates. Smoker now realized that he couldn't let him or his crew escape at any cost.
With Luffy.
Luffy was overall content, but a bit confused as the light that was shining through the clouds did make him wonder what that was about. Brushing it off, he took a glance to everyone, and saw that they were staring in utter disbelief from this.
Buggy and his crew were looking at him in awe. It was then that it clicked for Luffy what the scene looked like to them.
He had to stop himself from chuckling as the hole in the clouds began to close. So from here, Luffy disassembled into red cubes to appear to the back where Zoro, Ju and Sanji were, while surprising them a bit as he spoke. Might want to stop looking dazed, close your mouths and get it together, says Luffy, getting them to get it together.
Luffy, that was...
says Sanji, still shocked a bit from what happened. Don't bother dwelling on it because I'm confused as well, says Luffy, surprising them. I can sense the others already making their way to the ship, so are you guys ready, asks Luffy as the three nodded. Well, let's get out of here, says Luffy as he started running and they doing the same. As they did this, Marines started to funnel in and storm the plaza surrounding Luffy and everyone else involved there. When the Marines showed up, the civilians who were still looking at the wrecked platform were knocked from their dazed states. Just great, says Ju with a bored but serious expression.
Well, I guess the Navy really wants to catch you and Ju, huh, Luffy, asks Sanji as he lit a new cigarette.
Luffy, Ju, and Zoro chuckled a bit as Zoro decided to speak.
There has to be at least 500 or 1,000.
Let's get this done, so we can leave the place, says Zoro, ready to pull out one of his new swords as he stared on with a grin. Well, the entrance to the Grand Line is blocked as well due to the fact that they want me captured, says Luffy, grinning a bit.
Let's get this done and set sail.
I have no time for weaklings, says Luffy as he stared at the Marines in front of him. Hito Hito, Asura's dragon roar, says Luffy as he lets out a roar of crimson red flames that are sent at the Marines. It hits dead on, with Marines getting burns while moving out of the way or trying to retaliate after dodging. So after his attack hit his bunch, he looked over to see Ju handling his group with a wave of water from his devil fruit powers. Zoro caused a giant tornado of wind which picked up the marines surrounding him into the air, so when it stopped it showed Zoro standing in the center with all three of his swords drawn. So this caused marines to come falling out of the sky with Luffy dodging, but had to dodge a few more from Sanji's direction due to the fact that he did a spinning attack on his hands, kicking marines everywhere. "Watch where you're sending them all at," says Luffy yelling out to Sanji. "Sorry about that," says Sanji with a nervous chuckle while noticing. "Come on, we need to get out of here," says Luffy as the four began running. In the streets of Lode Town. As they were running, a group of marines in front of them that tried to cut them off, but they were easily dealt with by Ju, Zoro, and Sanji. So as they kept running, they ran through an unknown street to head back to the Going Merry, but they saw a very large group of marines running their way. The three were about to handle until Luffy spoke. "No, I handle it. It's time to show them the power I achieved on Raijin Island," says Luffy as the kanji tattoo for lightning glows blue and he surrounds his hands in lightning haki to attack. "Lightning style haki, lightning strike," says Luffy, sending an electric current of lightning that hits multiple marines at the same time, so Luffy decided to follow up with another attack to keep them where they were as his kanji tattoos for ice glows purple. "Ice style haki, freezing prison," says Luffy, sending ice towards the marines and freezing them in a prison of ice. So they kept running and were passing the frozen marines. Ju could see some trying to catch up with them. While Zoro and Sanji were looking at Luffy's work, and Sanji decided to speak while running towards the direction of the ship. "Not bad, Captain," says Sanji as Zoro nodded. "Yeah, haki has helped me out of many situations, especially the affinity I have for ice," says Luffy. So as they continued to run, they saw some woman standing in the middle of the road with her sword drawn. Upon seeing this, Sanji already was starting to flirt with her, but Ju had to hold him back from getting killed as the woman looked mad. The four of them stopped a few feet away from the woman as she began to speak. "I didn't know you were Roronoa Zoro, and a pirate no less," says the woman as she stared at Zoro with hatred in her eyes as she turned to Luffy and spoke again. "And you monkey D. Luffy, you disgrace to the marines with your actions. The both of you are handing in those swords, they don't belong in the hands of criminals," says the woman. "A girlfriend of yours or an ex from the past, Zoro? Because if she thinks she can take my swords, then she's more delusional than her subordinates," says Luffy. Zoro ignored that and unsheathed his Wado Ikemanji. "You three go, I'll catch up after handling this," says Zoro as they nodded and kept running. With Luffy and the others. Luffy, Ju, and Sanji kept running further down the street but saw a man standing in front of them not too far in front of Devil Fruit-based vehicle that looked like a motorcycle. Luffy saw him and knew it was Smoker. The three of them stopped not far from Smoker and Luffy spoke to Ju and Sanji. "You guys go on ahead, I catch up," says Luffy as they nod and ran past Smoker. Smoker looked on at the young man in front of him, getting the measure of him as he kinda thought that it was impossible that he caused the incident years before today. So he decided to keep his guard and speak. "You should really give up on catching up with your friends. This is the end of your journey and threat to the marines, Monkey D. Luffy," says Smoker as white smoke starts to rise and come off his body. Luffy stared on looking at this as he spoke. "I don't think my journey is ending here considering the Grand Line is waiting for me," says Luffy as uses his Devil Fruit to activate Vidra Asura with ice chill coming off his body. "You're not getting to the Grand Line unless you beat me," says Smoker as the smoke around him increased. "Really? Well then let's get started," says Luffy ready to fight. Luffy started by punching the area in front of him to cause a crack in the air as it then cracked and shattered and sent a shockwave with ice, but the kicker was the hand he used to punch with was coated in haki. This made Smoker's eyes widen. "Hito Hito, Asura's freezing shockwave," says Luffy as he saw the attack go forward at his opponent. "Not good. I can't dodge quick enough," thought Smoker before he was hit, causing him to cough while being launched back, and he was ultimately frozen from the oncoming ice. Luffy finished up and proceeded to walk forward but stopped as he felt something, and decided to speak out now. "You can come out of the shadows or you can stay there and not say anything me, Dad," says Luffy with a sigh. When he said this, a person came out of the shadows in an alleyway wearing a green cloak with the hood up. So when he stood before Luffy he smiled. "It's been a while since I last saw you, Luffy. You're looking more like your mother," says Luffy's father with a chuckle as he continued. "I'm glad that your grandfather's way of things didn't turn you into a marine, well not entirely due to sword and the government not being your thing no matter how good you were in that field of work. But I was surprised to hear that my former chief of staff caused the incident years ago when he decided to leave them both entirely," says Luffy's father, causing them both to chuckle. "Well, I have my own way of doing things, but I still do have the army's symbol tattooed on my right shoulder blade," says Luffy as he continued. "Though, it was in part from that, Gramps, Shanks, and your training that got me to where I am," says Luffy, surprising his father with eyes a bit wide. "So my father trained you, eh? Did my grandfather train you too?" asks Luffy's father, curious. "You mean great-grandpa Kong?" Yeah, he did, considering he's always stuck in Mariewa due to his promotion years back, and Sengoku taking over as Fleet Admiral, says Luffy as he continued. Though out of everything, I still have to wonder who my mother is, says Luffy, still wanting to know that.
In time you'll know.
I guarantee that, says Luffy's father, being cryptic about it. You still have my Den Mushi number, right? He asked.
Yeah, and you have mine.
I'll give you a call if I ever need your help, or vice versa, says Luffy as he walks, saying something. One more thing, Dad, when I find out who my mother is, she's going to want to beat you into the ground, right? I'll make sure she gets the chance, considering when I find out, you'll be receiving the same thing from your son, says Luffy with a dark aura around him as his father sweats a bit at that.
Yeah,
says Luffy's father, sweating a bit, not looking forward to that at all. The two started walking in their own directions, but Luffy narrowed his eyes a bit and spoke in a serious tone. Thought you still wear the wedding ring as proof of loyalty only to her, says Luffy in a serious tone as he continued on another subject at hand. The clan of D has been hiding in the shadows for centuries, and history for far too long. Afraid of the world government, and it's time for our clan to rise from that behind a leader of the main house. A Monkey D, to be exact, says Luffy, who turned his head a bit while getting his father's attention, causing him to turn serious as well. I agree, but all the older members of the leading family, including me, are in careers of their own or are too old, except you, says Luffy's father, causing Luffy to understand. So I'll be the leader of the family of D. Alright, says Luffy, continuing to walk as he spoke a final time. The time is near, and when I start leaking information the world government wanted to keep buried, we won't be hiding anymore. Our kingdom and empire still lives but is scattered, and it's time to bring them back into the fold to show the world we're still here, says Luffy, using wind hockey to float forward at a quick speed to get back to the ship. He sure has grown over the years, a very strong young man. Though it pains me that I did what I did to my wife and our son, thought Luffy's father, walking away from the area. 12 minutes later. Luffy used wind-style hockey to appear near the ship, but saw that Marines were shooting at the Going Merry. Zoro, Ju, and Sanji were fighting the Marines on shore, with Lily doing the same, using her devil fruit to enlarge parts of her body to take out large amounts of them. Usopp, Nami, and Nojiko were readying the ship to set sail. To end this quickly, Luffy launched an attack towards the oncoming Marines with his tomahawks. Lightning-style hockey, electrified tomahawks, says Luffy, sending the tomahawks spinning like a disc from the way he threw them, with a strong electrical current coming from them. So as they hit while going past, the lightning did its job to shock them violently and send them to the ground unconscious as they spun, coming back to Luffy, who caught them and put them back in their holsters. Luffy then disassembled into red cubes to get on the ship, while creating more red cubes to grab the others and put them on the ship. When everyone was on the ship, Luffy made his way to the top deck to give his orders. Alright everyone. Our business in Logtown is finished, and just ahead is the entrance to the Grand Line, says Luffy, causing them all to smile or smirk as he carried a barrel to the front as they followed. I think we should say something to mark the occasion as we make our way in, says Luffy, causing them all to nod. Sanji was the first to put his foot on the barrel and speak. I'm going to the Grand Line to find the All Blue, says Sanji with a smile. I'm going to unite my clan and lead them, while I'm going to become king of the pirates, says Luffy as he put his foot on the barrel. I'm going to sail with my brother Luffy, says Ju as he put his foot on the barrel. I'm going to become the world's strongest giant, says Lily as she puts her foot on the barrel. I'm going to become the strongest swordsman in the world, says Zoro as he placed his foot on the barrel. I'm going so I can draw a map of the entire world, says Nami as she put her foot on the barrel. I'm going to help my little sister achieve her dream while keeping her out of trouble as I see the world, says Nojiko as she put her foot on the barrel, causing them to chuckle. And I'm going to become a brave warrior of the seas like my father, says Usopp as he brought his foot on the barrel with the rest of the crew. And now to the Grand Line. To achieve our dreams, says Luffy as they all brought their foot up and smashed the barrel. This was the beginning of a great adventure as they sailed for and into the Grand Line. Chapter 12, More Bounties Posted, Entering the Grand Line, and Luffy's File. Marine HQ. In Marine Headquarters, the Vice Admirals were all gathered once again for a final time. This meeting would be for some other bounties that Brand New and Sengoku had to hash out as well, for many good reasons. It was to also receive the news in Logtown from Brand New, and also for the other bounties that will be coming out alongside Luffy's, considering they didn't at the time of Luffy's. So Brand New now stood at the front of the room as one Vice Admiral began to speak before him. So what is the status of Monkey D. Luffy in East Blue? Has he been caught in Logtown yet? Asks the Vice Admiral with a cigar in his mouth. Brand New was sweating a bit as he knew this would not be good, telling them the news. So he took a deep breath and spoke. As per the information we just received from Logtown, Monkey D. Luffy evaded capture with his crew heading towards the entrance of the Grand Line, says Brand New, shocking them with wide eyes as he continued. We're not sure if the ships posted at the entrance will stop him, but the chances are slim, says Brand New. Damn it all. This isn't good, says one Vice Admiral.
Of course this isn't. We have a threat out there with classified information that can damage how we're seen by the public, considering we're the face of justice, says a second vice admiral. Just great, says a third vice admiral, tiredly due to this situation. Brand New decides to speak to get to their next segment and to make them go quiet to get this out of the way. Well, it gets only worse as we go, says Brand New, making them all go quiet as he continued. As you all know, there are 8 other generals beside Monkey D. Luffy, who is the Pillar General of Wrath. They all see him not only as a commander but a sibling as well, says Brand New as he continued. So, we believe that in the coming days or weeks, maybe months, he'll gather them once again under his flag. Keep in mind that they may be the same age as Straw Hat, but they are extremely dangerous. Just because of a low bounty doesn't mean they're not strong enough to put up a heavy fight. Now I have the official bounties for the other Pillar Generals that will be sent out and posted, says Brand New, shocking them. Alright, what are the bounties we're posting for them, asks one of the Vice Admirals. Brand New clears his throat while pulling down a bulletin with the posted bounties. This shocks them by the price they're getting, so Brand New speaks out. The first of the 8 other generals from the 9 that originates from East Blue. Maristeiju, the Pillar General of Water and Justice, along with Envy, otherwise known by his epithet Dead Calm Ju, and current holder of the Logia Devil Fruit, Mizu Mizu no Mi, will have a bounty of 180 million berries, says Brand New. This information also shocks the Vice Admirals at the fact that there is water-based devil fruit and a Logia at that. He uses the pointer stick to head to the next of them. The second is one who originates from West Blue. Petra D. Gyomii, the Pillar General of Earth and Prayer, along with Melancholy, otherwise known by his epithet Devastating Quake Gyomii, and current holder of the Logia Devil Fruit, Tsuchitsuchi no Mi, will have a bounty of 170 million berries, says Brand New. He goes down to the next name and begins speaking once more. The third is one who originates from South Blue. Kagetsuchi D. Agni, the Pillar General of Fire, Anger, and Greed, otherwise known by his epithet Hellblaze Agni, and the current holder of the mythical Zoan Devil Fruit, Hito no Mi, model, Kagetsuchi will have a bounty of 160 million berries, says Brand New. Brand New then points to the next of the other Pillar Generals and begins to speak. The fourth is one who originates from North Blue. Atlas D. Inasuk, the Pillar General of Air and Beasts, along with Vanity, otherwise known by his epithet Wind Calamity Atlas, and the current holder of the Logia Devil Fruit, Kaze no Mi, will have a bounty of 150 million berries, says Brand New. Has anyone noticed that they all have devil fruits that are extremely dangerous, says a Vice Admiral, paling at these monsters as Brand New continued. The fifth is one who originates from the New World. Kurama D. Alize, the Pillar General of Foxes and Freedom, along with Sloth, otherwise known by her epithet Fox-Faced Alize, and the current holder of the special mythical Zoan Devil Fruit, Inu no Mi, model, Kyubi no Yoko, will have a bounty of 140 million berries, says Brand New. He then points to the next on the list after clearing his throat. The sixth is one who also originates from the New World. Himojima D. Akino, the Pillar General of Lightning and Thunder, along with Lust, otherwise known by her epithet Flying Thunder Goddess Akino, and the current holder of the special mythical Zoan Devil Fruit, Hito no Mi, model, Raijin, will have a bounty of 129 million berries, says Brand New. Brand New then pointed to the next one from the last and decided to speak. The seventh is one who originates from Paradise. Light D. Alina, the Pillar General of Elegance, Light, along with Pride, otherwise known by her epithet Heavenly Princess Light, and the current holder of the mythical Zoan Devil Fruit, Hito no Mi, model, Amaterasu, will have a bounty of 112 million berries, says Brand New. So they either have Zoans, Logias, or some sort of mythical Zoans. Says a Vice Admiral, now seeing why this was a major security problem for the Marines. As it was proving these generals who had deserted from the Marines and world government could become a greater threat in the coming months. Brand New then takes a sip of water from a glass near him and then puts it on the tray. Clearing his throat, he speaks on the last one of the Pillar Generals. The last of the 9 and 8th is one who originates also from Paradise. Makoto D. Dariari, the Pillar General of Darkness and Strength, along with Violence, otherwise known by her epithet Dark Princess Dariari, and the current holder of the mythical Zoan Devil Fruit, Tori no Mi, model, Yami no Fenikusu, will have a bounty of 105 million berries, says Brand New. He let this sink in for the Marines present in the room for a moment as he continued further. Keep in mind that individually these people are dangerous, put them all together and it's an entirely different story. These people are now even more dangerous than they were before, due to the fact that when they chose to desert their positions, they destroyed most of the Holy Land of Mariewa at the age of 13 in the incident that occurred 4 years ago. Now with the return of their captain years later, it can only be assumed that they will return to being a crew that commands dominance over not only the ground but the air and sea, says Brand New as he continued. As it stands now, with all the bounties together, it puts the organization itself at 1,441 million berries, says Brand New, giving the rundown of their combined bounties. How shall we proceed if we encounter them? Actually, what should we be telling the lower ranks, asks a Vice Admiral, shocked. That's what we'll be discussing next. Even though the bounties are low, it compares nothing to what they should be, but due to the fleet admiral's orders giving them a high bounty before even reaching the end of paradise, like the captain of this crew would cause panic, along with the fact that they can use hockey along with a few being able to use the conquerors as well, it's unknown who has it or how many of them have it. Now let's begin the rest of this meeting, says Brand New, shocking them a bit at this too. The meeting brought their attention to these dangerous individuals and the captain who formerly lead them, but now it was apparent that they would gather once again in soon. With Luffy and the crew. It has been an hour now since the crew left Lode Town, and were currently sailing towards the entrance of the Grand Line. So now, Usopp was manning the rudder while Ju and Zoro were up in the crow's nest looking out. Lily was sitting at the rear deck of the ship cleaning her weapon. Nami and Nojiko were near her looking at a map of the Grand Line, while Sanji was in the kitchen putting away the supplies he brought. Luffy was sitting on the railing of the top deck while staring at a thundercloud starting to churn and manifest in the sky. He didn't really mind it, considering it could be like this when getting closer to the Grand Line entrance. They had a tailwind since leaving Lode Town and were likely to be away from the storm before it could even begin. Luffy was about to close his eyes to enjoy the wind in his face for a bit, when suddenly Nami screamed, startling everyone and causing Luffy to jump a bit and be fully awake now. "H-ish," says Nami, yelling in a panic. Luffy looked over to her, rubbing his eyes a bit as he spoke. "What are you screaming about?" "It can't be bad, can it?" asks Luffy tiredly as everyone ran over to her find out what the screaming was all about. "I was looking at the map we stole a while back from Beating Buggy, and it says here that the entrance to the Grand Line is a mountain," says Nami, causing everyone's eyes to widen except for Luffy's, Ju, and Lily. Zoro was the first to speak in the group while getting out of his shock. "A mountain?" asks Zoro while looking at Nami confused. "Are we supposed to crash into it or climb it?" asks Zoro, making Luffy and the rest look at him with an exasperated expression. "Really, Zoro? Does that sound like how you enter the Grand Line?" "'Cause it sure ain't how we do it," says Ju with a blank look, causing Zoro to look embarrassed as Sanji decided to ask the question. "So how exactly do we enter the Grand Line?" asks Sanji, wanting an answer. "We sail up the mountain," says Luffy as Ju nodded and the others looked at the two like they were crazy, so Lily decided to explain a bit further. "There's a current for us to enter by ship," says Lily with a smile, surprising them. "Hand me the map, Nami," says Ju, walking over to her as she handed it to him. So they all gathered around as they looked at the map as he explained. "You see this mountain right here? That mountain is a part of the Red Line and is called Reverse Mountain. As Lily said, there's a current, well, 4 current from all the 4 seas that run up the mountain and into the Grand Line," says Ju, tracing his finger that represents the currents, as those who didn't get it started to get it at this information as they were just informed on how the entrance works. "But shouldn't that be impossible? Currents cannot flow up a mountain," says Nojiko, having a disbelieving look on her face. "Well, that could said for a country in the Grand Line known as Wano Country, which does the same thing like this mountain," says Luffy as he said one more thing. "It's also the country of samurai," says Luffy as Zoro perked up at that and got a grin in anticipation as he would be patient to get there. Like Luffy is saying, in a normal world it's one thing, but this is the Grand Line. If you go into that sea and try using logic in a place where it means nothing, you'll go mad and lose it. There is nothing sane about that sea. 1 minute it is raining, and then 2 seconds snowing," says Ju, making their eyes widen. "Don't forget the lightning storms that could rage on for days," says Luffy, making sure he didn't forget that. "What about the Sea Kings?" asks Lily, putting in her part. "That too," says Luffy, accepting that too. While they said this, everyone was wondering where their sanity went and came to the conclusion that the Grand Line took that. So Nami was the first to speak after hearing this in shock. "You're kidding, right?" asks Nami, sweating a bit. "Not at all. Well, the lighting piece, I've been to a place called Raijin Island in the New World, where I worked on how to use lightning actually, but it can also rain hail there, the size of galleons, but it in paradise, I've never seen it, though I've heard the wreckage of ships fall from somewhere in the Grand Line," says Luffy, causing her to nod as he went to ask her something else. "Oh, were you and Nojiko able to get the log pose?" asks Luffy as she nodded. "Yes, we did, but you said you had one, so why do we need them?" asks Nami, still curious about that. "Well, considering the captain should be prepared for anything, I should need one," says Luffy, answering the first piece as he continued. "The second is for you as navigator of the ship and Nojiko helping you, if she needs to take over when not training to use her sword with Zoro. It's how you navigate the Grand Line due to regular compasses not working there. The both of you don't lose it or else we all die, well, after losing the spare I keep just in case," says Luffy as he decided to ask one more question. "By the way, what did all you buy when we were in Lode Town?" asks Luffy. "I bought some fresh fruit and vegetables to cook some better and healthier meals. I also brought a lot of meat as well. That along with kitchen utensils ranging from pots, pans, knives, and other things I'll need to better the meals I cook. The best part is I want a bluefin elephant tuna, which I'll prepare later after I find something I want to add with the meal," says Sanji happily.
I look forward to that, haven't had fish in a while so it should be a good meal, says Luffy as he then looked over to Usopp. I bought the 2 flintlocks like yours like you said, but for regular ammunition along with a musket rifle, but I also got these goggles to help with my aim while hitting my targets better. With that I also bought a few chemicals and liquids to help my pistol and slingshot attacks more deadlier. That way my shots will add to the fear of the great Captain Usopp, says Usopp yelling the last part as they chuckle at that. So, Luffy then turned to Lily as she spoke. I brought a new spear, single-bladed that helps with my devil fruit powers and an arm-strapped hook blade, says Lily as the spear was strapped to her back and she showed the hook blade off, as this piqued Luffy's interest as he needed something like that and would talk to her later. So now Luffy turned to Ju as he spoke. I bought myself a log pose as well and some bamboo sparring swords along with some other proper training weapons and weights, says Ju as Luffy nodded and turned to Zoro. I can't say I bought anything except for the sword Nojiko needs, but for me because these 2 swords, Sandai Kitetsu and Yubashiri, the owner gave me these 2 swords for free, says Zoro surprising them all. Why would someone give you 2 swords for free, asks Sanji causing Zoro to pick up the sword with the red scabbard as he spoke to answer that question. It's because of this sword that he gave me the 2 for free, says Zoro as Luffy decides to speak. It's because it cursed, says Luffy looking at the blade with Ju as they all were shocked by that. It's one of the grade swords and one of the Kitetsu blades, says Luffy as Zoro nodded. There are 3 known Kitetsu blades as there are possibly more. All 3 of them are cursed like some of the other Mido swords out in the world. The Kitetsu swordsmiths are very skilled, having forged some of the most powerful swords in the world. Each of their blades are cursed and are said to eventually kill their wielder as the myth and story goes, says Luffy scaring them all except Ju and Lily. So Luffy then turned to Nami who spoke. I brought charting paper and backup ink and pens to chart that is high quality, along with clothes and shoes and the log pose you wanted me to get, says Nami as Luffy nodded and turned to Nojiko. I brought the same with Nami along with the katana Zoro brought me, says Nojiko as he nodded. Good, practice how to use it with Zoro and maybe you can develop your own style, says Luffy as he then proceed to give order. Usopp, I want you on the rudder. Sanji, cook us something for lunch please, considering we'll be at the entrance soon so we better get our meal out of the way. Zoro and Ju, I want you guys in the crow's nest looking out considering after we eat and get back to work, we should see the entrance, says Luffy. Everyone nodded and got to doing what they were told as Luffy looked at the sky. He wouldn't, would he? Thought Luffy with narrowed eyes. Though the current should be too strong for Usopp to steer, so Ju's devil fruit powers will guide us in a bit, thought Luffy. 30 minutes later. It's been 30 minutes since Luffy and the crew got their orders. They also ate a good meal from Sanji's cooking skills and enjoyed it. So after Luffy and the others were done they went back to work. All was quiet and silent as they went in and got past the storm area they were in, as it was clear now, but a strong water current was moving rapidly with the ship while pulling it in. So, now Ju had called out to Luffy due to seeing something. Luffy! We got Marines, says Ju from the crow's nest yelling out as it got everyone's attention. Luffy looked forward as did everyone else and saw 2 fleets of marine ships. He saw that each had 25 to make 50 in total and they were all sailing towards them. So now, Luffy sighed and decided to speak on this. So, it would seem they don't want me re-entering the Grand Line for the trouble I've caused along with my team, says Luffy making his assumption. What are your orders, Luffy, asks Nami as she and Nojiko were near him. Sail right towards them, says Luffy coating his hand in ice, but it took the color of purple as he continued. Lily and Zoro, take over at the rudder for Usopp. Usopp, get on the cannons, says Luffy as the 3 in question scramble to get to the spots asked of them. Usopp, now start to aim the cannons, and start taking down ships as we come in. I'll take the bulk of the force myself, says Luffy causing Usopp to nod and go below deck to position them. While he asked for Nami and Nojiko to get the ones on the top deck. What are you gonna do, Captain, asks Sanji as Ju came down from the crow's nest to stand nearby. Something I didn't try in the battle with the bastard who gave me this scar, says Luffy as he pointed to the left side of his jaw extending down to his neck and continued. Though it would seem Marine Headquarters sent the other 25 ships from Branch 80 that should be stationed in West Blue while the others come from Branch 8, led by Commodore Nelson. If I'm correct the bastard isn't even a challenge, says Luffy as Nami and Nojiko who just finished giggled a bit. Sanji nodded and looked forward a bit further and as did Ju. As they were coming in Usopp destroyed about 5 ships in the direction of the cannons. Ju continued to look forward as he noticed something. Luffy, I can see the entrance, says Ju looking forward as Luffy did as well seeing it. Alright, let's get this done. Ju, take over command of the ship with your devil fruit, says Luffy commanding. Right, says Ju with a nod putting his right hand out as it glowed a ocean blue. Mizu, guide, says Ju using the surrounding water to control the direction of the ship. Once this was done Luffy decided to yell out a final time. Zoro and Lily. You can stop handling the rudder. Usopp cease firing, I got this, says Luffy as they all did, and wanted to see what would come next as he spoke. Rage Zone, says Luffy as his body was coated in a red-like energy which surprised them as he spoke. Hito, says Luffy beginning as he gathered rage above the fleet before him. As he did this, Luffy took his left hand which the ice around it, and put a quake bubble around it that glowed red. He raised his hand up towards the sky with everyone looking as he uttered the words for the doom to begin. Tremoring frozen rage storm, says Luffy as he clenched his fist for the attack to come forth. As this happened, a beam of red energy which was anger and rage came down from within the clouds from the sky and hit the surrounding area of the marine ships. It then froze them all, and then sent red quake cracks all throughout the area of the water and along the ships that shattered, and sent shock waves, destroying the ships left and right. This left the two fleets utterly destroyed by what just happened. Every one of the crew stared at this attack in shock with mouths opened a bit, except for Ju and Lily who were used to something like this. Though Zoro and Sanji's eyes widened a bit as they were starting to get used to this and the fact that Luffy was a powerful individual, who had the brains to go along with it. Luffy powered down all of his abilities and spoke to Usopp as he saw he left the one he wanted, considering he used Haki to carefully look and leave that one out of the attack. Usopp, leave that one. I left it there on purpose as they'll be sending the message of what happened here back to their superiors, says Luffy. Aye Captain, says Usopp as Luffy began to give out orders to the others. To take us in, Usopp handled the rudder once more so it's guided gently and doesn't snap. The rest of you raise the sails, the current will take us all the way in, says Luffy giving his command, causing everyone to nod. Ju used his hand to guide the ship with the current in a direct path for the entrance as Usopp handled the rudder as requested. While this was going on, Lily, Zoro, and Sanji went to raise the sails as requested. Nami and Nojiko went to help the others get everything tied down as well. Luffy stood on the main deck with Ju as he was working to guide them in. So while moving forward, the current was becoming stronger. As the ship was sailing towards the entrance, they were sailing through the wreckage that had ice on some parts of about everything from the attack that destroyed this fleet. There were wounded in the water, some trying to help with dead marines everywhere also. So as they sailed through, Luffy and Ju saw Commodore Nelson. So Luffy decided to freeze the man's arms to the post he was on, as it looked to them he was struggling. Nelson looked over to Luffy, who did a lazy salute of the fingers with a smirk on his face as he turned and faced forward, with Nami coming to speak out to him due to how the storm was going around the entrance. Luffy, I don't see the entrance. All I see is the red line in our way, says Nami yelling as the wind blew. See the tiny crack in the mountain there? That's our entrance, says Luffy yelling out to her. Yeah. I see it, says Nami looking. I can't believe it, the current is really flowing up the mountain, says Zoro looking through binoculars as he passed them over to Nami. Hold her steady, Usopp lead the rudder with Ju's guiding path as we head in, says Luffy. Aye, says Usopp doing just that. As they got closer, everyone could see the entrance clear as day. They all saw the water running up the mountain and just at the entrance, there were arches going over the canals. It was here that Luffy and the others noticed that the ship was drifting off a bit. We're drifting off course. Hard to starboard, says Nami yelling out. Going hard to starboard, says Ju and Usopp guiding them back on course. As they began to direction the ship with Usopp following Ju's current path through the rudder over to the right as hard as he could. With the extremely strong currents, it was getting difficult to steer, but Usopp kept it together as best as he could. So as they were coming in, they heard a snap that made their eyes widen when they turned to see the rudder snap. Luffy snapped his head back to Ju and spoke. Guide us the rest of the way. Usopp, get that fixed later when we're in calmer waters, says Luffy giving them orders. Aye Captain, says the two of them. So as that happened, Ju entered the canal smoothly without hitting the walls. So the minute the ship had gotten a straight path with the current, he let go to let it guide them up. Everyone let out a sigh of relief as they began climbing Reverse Mountain. We made it in, says Usopp and Nami doing a dance. It's a straight shot from here to the summit and back down into the Grand Line, says Ju as he sat on a nearby barrel. As they climbed to higher altitude, the crew watched and took in the sights of it all. They had smiles on their faces as the ship climbed higher and higher to the summit. We're in the clouds, says Nojiko amazed by this. No, we're above the clouds now, says Sanji as the ship climbed higher above the clouds. That's how the red line works, says Luffy. I can see the summit now, says Zoro as they all saw it. They all saw where the currents from all the four seas meet and run to funnel into the Grand Line. It was a breathtaking and beautiful sight too, the four currents crashing into each other, splashing of the ocean water into the air that immediately froze with some thinking it was Luffy, who shook his head as it turned to ice. So when the sun hit, it looked like shining clear gems in the sky. This one away as the Going Merry rode the wave in perfect sync thanks to Ju and Usopp's work and entered the canal leading into paradise, the first half of the Grand Line. There it is, this it, the greatest sea of them all.
The Grand Line, says Luffy as he stood there looking as they came down with a smile on his face. Let the greatest adventure of an era begin, thought Luffy with that smile as Lily came up to hold his right hand with a smile. As the ship was going down to get to the bottom, the more puzzled everyone became except for those who already saw it. So, Sanji decided to speak on this. Luffy, is there supposed to be another mountain or some sort of ramp? Asks Sanji, seeing something ahead in a confused voice of question. Luffy looked over and decided to speak on this. No, why? Asks Luffy as Sanji pointed ahead. At the base of the mountain where the water lets into the Grand Line, was something very large, blocking the exit for them to sail forth. I haven't seen this before, but then again I used my dragon form or either swam to get back and forth to places most of the time, says Luffy as he heard something was always stationed at the front of the entrance into the Grand Line but never got a chance to find out what it was. So as he was remembering that a sudden noise filled the air as they were descending in speed. It sounded like an animal wailing or crying out, more distinctly a wail. As they got close to the bottom, Luffy yelled out. Usopp! Is it possible to use what's left of the rudder? Asks Luffy, yelling out. No. Barely able to hang on as it needs repair, says Usopp, yelling out. Luffy sighed a bit as Ju got up and started using the same technique to guide the water once more while Luffy prepared to give his order to Ju for the signal. So as they got closer the noise became louder and louder. What the hell is that? Asks Lily while placing a hand on her ear trying to get herself level to bear it. As the ship was getting closer, Luffy and Ju saw it and were finally able to make out what it was, as Luffy's thought came true. It's a giant whale, says Luffy, yelling out to inform them as everyone panicked. Luffy, we need to slow the ship down, we're moving too fast, says Nami, noticing the speed. Luffy took action and looked toward Ju and one more. Ju, use your control of the water to slow us down as much as you can. Usopp, get the paddles out and be prepared. Lily, use your devil fruit to grow and use your spear to help slow us down, says Luffy as they all got moving for the signal. As Ju was using his devil fruit to slow them down as best as he could. Usopp got the paddles out, prepared with Lily waiting for the signal. So when they were a good distance away from the whale, Luffy yelled out. Now, says Luffy, causing Lily to grow and use her spear on the nearby walls, along with Ju to help with the water as it gave him better control now, so Lily shrunk after a few seconds seeing Ju have more control now, so Luffy gave the next order. Everyone grab the paddles and start rowing around it, says Luffy as he and everyone else grabbed the paddles and started rowing to the left of the giant whale and away from danger, dropping the anchor as well. So when they got done with Usopp and Sanji putting away the paddles, Luffy got a good look at the whale. It was an extremely large whale, comparable in size to most of the Combelt Sea Kings. Its eye alone is several times larger than the Going Merry. Its skin is black, coupled with short fins and a fluked tail. Much of its head is crisscrossed with scars, which Luffy assumed was from many years of tackling Reverse Mountain. That's one large whale, says Sanji, coming up with everyone to see it, as this caused everyone to nod their head while staring at the whale in amazement and a bit of fear except for Ju and Lily. Yeah, says Luffy. I seriously don't remember this whale being here, thought Luffy with a look of question on his face as Ju walked up to Luffy and decided to ask a question. If I remember correctly, this was not here the last time we visited on a mission, says Ju, remembering himself. Yeah, but that was a while too, says Luffy as he continued. Though we should be fine considering we didn't need to fire at it, says Luffy as the whale was opening its mouth and wailed loudly while showing an extremely large mouth with pointed teeth capable of destroying their ship as they were bigger than the Going Merry. As its mouth opened, the water from the ocean was being poured into its mouth and down its throat, but it also pulled the anchor which pulled the ship, shocking Luffy. The Going Merry began to get pulled in with the water that was being sucked and causing them all to panic. We're going to die, says Nami with tears coming down her eyes while screaming. This can't end here. We just got in the Grand Line, says Usopp, yelling while panicking. Luffy was about to act to get them out somehow, but it suddenly closed its mouth and began to submerge underwater, with Luffy telling due to observation haki. It's submerging, says Luffy, knowing if they attacked from the inside and escaped, it would take more time for Luffy and Ju to get everyone and then push the ship back up to the surface. Everyone looked in front of them and saw that they were about to crash into a part of the whale's stomach. So everyone closed their eyes and waited for something, but nothing came. So, they opened their eyes to see what was going on, and what they saw made their eyes widen and jaws drop in question. Is this even real, or are we dead? Asked Sanji in pure disbelief, thinking they might have died. I don't know, but one thing is clear. We're not dead, says Ju, looking at this while Luffy and Lily nodded. In front of their eyes was clear skies with birds in the air, and off to the right of the Going Merry was a small island with a house on it. It was puzzling everyone entirely, considering 1 minute they're being swallowed by a whale and the next they're back in what looks like the open sea. So they all turned to Luffy and Ju, with Lily as well, to find out what was happening, but they both shook their heads. Don't look at us, because when we came here, the whale wasn't here, says Luffy, making sure they knew that. Which begs the question, was it always here and we never noticed, asks Ju to Luffy. I don't know, but as it stands now we're not in a real ocean. The water is green and the sky is at best painted perfectly, says Luffy, pointing up for them to notice that. Though I can sense multiple corridors where we are, thought Luffy. As this happened, a giant squid rose out of the green water at them and was getting ready to attack as Ju and Lily were at the ready. Luffy expected the others to all to be scared and freeze up, but instead looked ready to attack. It brought a smirk to his face when he saw their reactions. Zoro and Ju had their hands on their swords, Lily had her spears ready, Sanji was getting ready to use his legs, Nojiko had her hand on her sword as well, along with Nami pulling out a red metal staff, and Usopp having his rifle ready to fire off. Luffy had came to the conclusion that the rest of the crew who just started using haki had used observation haki to sense the threat, which Luffy was proud that they could now sense the said threat. He didn't need to do anything, as he was sure they could handle it. So as the squid came forward and just as all of them were about to attack, 3 harpoons came out of the house and struck the squid, killing it. Luffy narrowed his eyes and stared towards the doorway, feeling a familiar aura, and saw a man slowly walking out from the shadows. A ship? Asks the man still in the shadows. Looks like someone's home, says Zoro, crossing his arms while staring at the man with narrowed eyes. I say we fire, says Usopp while pointing at the man. No, hold on, says Sanji while keeping his guard up. When Luffy, Ju, and Lily saw who it was, they immediately recognized the guy. For Luffy, he met the man many times swimming back and forth for mission or free time to get place. Though after what happened when leaving the Marines and joining up with Shanks in his time of training, he heard about him more. So he and the two decided to let what came next happen. They all stared at the man as he walked out of the house, never taking his eyes off the crew while he walked to his lawn chair. The tension was growing and Luffy could see the brave attitudes from earlier start to fade a bit, with sweating a bit too. Everyone was expecting the man to attack or do something, but instead, he just stared at them while he walked to the lawn chair, making them all nervous before he sat down on the chair. Making himself comfortable and began reading a newspaper. You gonna say anything? Says Sanji, yelling angry with shark-like teeth. As the man looked from his paper over to them, with Usopp speaking next. Hey! You wanna fight? Well, fight. We got cannons back here, you bastard, says Usopp in the cabin area with Luffy, Nami, and Nojiko looking at him and causing them to sweat drop. Seems like he's back to his antics again, thought the three on how Usopp was acting. The old man's eyes narrowed a bit in a glare as he stared at them once more, causing the tension to go back up but even further once more. Making them and everyone sweat while Luffy, Ju, and Lily just looked on as it was funny to them. You try it and someone's going to die, says the man, making Zoro narrowed his eyes even further with Nojiko next to him while Nami and Usopp held hands, scared in fear. Sanji himself got a small smirk as he spoke. Yay? And who's that? Asks Sanji with a smirk while waiting for the answer. Me, of course, says the man. Excuse me, asks Sanji, angry once more. You? Says Sanji, ready to fight. Easy there, bud, says Zoro, putting a hand on Sanji's shoulder to calm him down. Old bastard's mocking us, says Sanji, angry while Zoro pushed him back a bit as he came forward. Zoro came up to speak next as Sanji backed up. There's a couple things we need to know. Where are we? And who are you? Says Zoro, with the man narrowing his eyes a bit in a glare to stare at them once more, again with the tension in the air for a few seconds before speaking. You got some nerve, stranger. It's only polite to introduce yourself before asking a question of someone you just met, says the man. Zoro was taken aback by this, with a bit of sweat rolling down his face, and decided to go along with it. Alright, fair enough, I'll go first. My name is, says Zoro starting, but was cut off. If you must know, my name is Crocus and I'm the lighthouse keeper of the Twin Capes. I'm 71.5 years old, Gemini. Says the now identified Crocus, continuing. I'll kill him, I swear, says Zoro, angry now, going for his swords. Calm down, says Sanji, putting a hand on his shoulder. Can we just figure out where we are already? Says Nojiko, angry with these two not asking the obvious question. So as that happened, Luffy, Ju, and Lily laughed a bit, which got the rest of the crew confused. So, Luffy decided to speak now. Crocus, you wanna stop messing with them now? Asks Luffy with a chuckle, calming down as he stepped forward. Who are you and why are you interrupting my gag? It's amusing to me, says Crocus. If you don't remember, well, it was the brat who wore the monkey mask along with my team of the other 8 who passed through here occasionally, says Luffy, making Crocus now know who this was as he continued. I'm also a friend of the Red Hair Pirates, Captain Shanks and Old Man Rayleigh, says Luffy, causing those who had not known Luffy long to wonder who this Old Man Rayleigh was. Crocus' eyes widened now, fully recognizing the kid from the earrings and red tip at the ends of his hair, and chuckled a bit. So, it's you? It's been a while since seeing you and your group of brats, though it also has been a while since I heard those two names before, says Crocus. How's the red-haired brat doing and Rayleigh?
It's been some time, says Crocus. They're fine, we can talk more about it, if you can help us get out of here, says Luffy. I thought you could already tell that you were eaten, says Crocus, causing their eyes to widen. The exit you're looking for is right over there, says Crocus, pointing to the large metal doors with them, wondering how a whale could have this. Okay, I know a fair good amount of how animals work, and I'm no caretaker either on whales, but I'm sure they don't have metal gates on the inside of their stomachs either, says Nojiko, with Ju and Sanji nodding. Before anyone could speak, the entire place shook wildly, causing the water to start becoming rough. The crew was trying to keep their footing as this happened.
What is going on? Asks Nami, yelling as she held onto a railing to keep her balance, with the ship rocking a bit from the water.
It's happening, says Crocus, causing Luffy to look at him and wonder what he meant by that. Look, says Ju, seeing something over the rail of the ship as everyone looked in his direction. That's a ship of some kind, says Ju, causing them all to see that Crocus Island was some kind of ship made of iron. Of course it is, because we are floating on a sea of acid inside the whale's stomach, says Usopp, now seeing their problem, which could turn very bad for them. That means a wooden ship like ours won't fare well if we stay here too long, says Sanji.
What is happening with the whale? Asks Zoro, yelling out to Crocus.
Crocus was standing up from his chair as he spoke and looked up at the fake sky and spoke. He's angry. These aftershocks, along with the vibration, are a result with him hitting his head against the red line, says Crocus, surprising them all except for Luffy and Ju, along with Lily, as they could tell the scars weren't from Sea Kings. That explains why he has them, and not to mention the whales, says Nami, still holding on to her part of the railing. But why? That's what I want to know, says Usopp.
It's because he's suffering, says Luffy, as when he used Haki, he could sense it.
And what's the deal with that, old man? Asks Sanji. He is most likely trying to kill it from the inside, says Nami, speculating. That's so cruel, says Usopp. You idiots. Crocus is a doctor. If anything, he's trying to help, says Luffy, yelling as they all got it. Okay, we figured that out as a part of this crazy mystery, but how do we find a way out of its belly before we're digested? Asks Zoro while he was looking at the rest of the crew. It's like Luffy said before, he's a doctor, so we have no right to judge the old man, nor do we have to save the whale when the old man's trying to help it already. What we need to do now is to focus on how to get out of here so we don't die, says Sanji as he Ju and Zoro began walking towards Luffy. Just as they were about to reach Luffy and say something about all of this, Crocus jumped into the gastric acid, which made them get surprised by this. What? Says Zoro, wondering if the guy was crazy. Is he mad? The acid will eat his skin alive, says Luffy as he stared into the place Crocus jumped. Luffy, we have to find a way out before the ship is destroyed, says Nami, yelling over to him. We can't, the whale is underwater right now. The moment those doors open, the ship will sink to the bottom of the Grand Line. Meaning it will take me and Ju a very long to get it back up to the surface, with the two of us being the only people who can breathe underwater and survive the pressure, says Luffy as he didn't want to do that and would rather find a way to keep the ship from sinking and having to swim and fetch it. So what do we do? Asks Usopp, yelling out. I'm working on that, says Luffy, causing them to relax and nod. As this went on for a couple of minutes past, and Crocus later resurfaced from the acid next to some doors and began climbing the ladder that was next to it. As he climbed and reached the top. So as he went for a smaller doors at the top, they flew open and stepped into the room were two people, a man and a woman. They then took aim at Crocus and pulled the trigger. Just as the bullets were about to exit the barrels, ice covered the guns entirely, causing them to drop the guns from the coldness and make them shatter. Crocus and the two individuals were shocked by what just happened. When they all looked towards the ship at the middle of the whale's stomach to see a boy with average height wearing Hanafuda earrings and a straw hat with a black steel-colored monkey mask strapped to his shoulder, wearing a haori while holding a gun with ice chill coming off it as he aimed at them with deadly accuracy. Well, this is a surprise, two people trespassing inside here, which I'm still trying to figure out how while trying to kill the old man, says Luffy in a calm voice, but it still sent chills down their spines due to deadly aura it had. Luffy then put the gun back in his left hip holster to put it away. Once done, he made two arms on his left side and stretched them to grab the people and wrapped the two arms around them. Ah! What are you doing? Asks the young woman of the two, yelling in panic. Luffy ignored this and simply yanked his arms to come back for these two people to come flying over and land on the ship. Luffy then went on to put the two in ice restraints, causing them to be bounded by the arms, legs, and torso. As that happened, Crocus walked through the doors that the two individuals came from and disappeared, leaving the two intruders with the crew. Now, who are you two? Asks Zoro as he walked towards the two. While this occurred, Sanji was being held back by Ju's water hole to stop him from flirting with the woman. Luffy looked at this woman with a glare, as did she to him. He found it impressive someone could match an ice-cold glare like his. That went away as the man and woman spoke to each other in a hushed tone so the others wouldn't hear. As this happened, Crocus came back yelling.
You bastards are still here, says Crocus yelling from the upper level as it got everyone's attention. The old man is back, says Usopp informing the others. I've grown tired of this, and for the last time. So long as I'm here and still kicking, you won't hurt Laboon, says Crocus yelling from the top level. Soon the two people who were now held captive by the crew started laughing before they spoke while raising their heads. You can't scare us into abandoning the mission our superiors gave us, says the young woman. Now Luffy wondered who sent them here and who they were working for. We were sent here to hunt this whale and bring it back dead, and that is what we're going to do, and we won't let you interfere in our work because Dash says the man after her but was cut off with an ice spear above their heads that scared the living hell out of them. Shut it, we don't care for your reasons right now, says Luffy as the two were starting to annoy him. Hey old man Crocus, can we leave so we can talk on the outside and not be digested while putting the ship at risk? We would like our ship in one piece, says Luffy wanting to get out of here. Fine, says Crocus as he jumped back down into the green water and swam back to his island that was a boat and spoke once he reached it. Follow me, says Crocus as he started moving his island towards the large doors as they opened. The two ships were sailing through what looked to them like a canal inside the whale. So now, Ju decided to ask the old man a question of his own upon seeing this. Why does the whale have a canal and pathways inside it, asks Ju using observation haki to see the many paths. Call it an easier way for me to do my work to help him. It's impossible to help a whale of this size, so I had to come up with a way to get around my problem, says Crocus as Ju nodded with everyone understanding now. So as they reached the end of the canal, they came upon a door that looked to be the exit. So when they reached it and stopped their ships a few feet away from it, Crocus sailed a bit further on his own ship to pull a lever causing the door to open for them. So when this happened, they were immediately hit with rays of sunlight causing them all to sigh in relief and smile. Outside. They sailed out of the whale and released the anchor to dock the ship next to the twin capes of the Grand Line where Crocus lived and did his job as keeper of the lighthouse. The entire crew got off the ship and went onto the small island connected to the Red Line where the lighthouse was stationed. Sanji, why don't you get us something small to eat while we talk with Crocus, says Luffy causing Sanji to nod as he went back onto the ship to get in the kitchen. I'll cook up some meat for us along with making some cold drinks, says Sanji with a small smile about to get to work. 20 minutes later. After 20 minutes, Sanji appeared with plates of not only meat but salad and other small dishes that looked good to eat. So now he spoke with a small bow. Food is served, now dig in, says Sanji as they all went for a plate and then to grab food. This looks delicious, thanks for the food Sanji, says Lily with a smile. You're welcome, says Sanji with a smile and nod. Extremely well done, says Ju eating. So while they ate, Luffy decided to speak about something that's been on his mind since they got here. Crocus, may I ask what's wrong with the whale? Whenever I passed through here, there never was one or I missed and I was wondering what's wrong with it, but also why were the two tied on my ship hunting it, says Luffy. Yeah, I've been wondering that myself, says Ju eating. Crocus sighed a bit putting his plate down in front of him as he spoke. The whale's been here for many years, sometimes he goes off but stays here overall. His name is Laboon, he's magnificent creature. As an island whale, one of the largest species in the world that can be found at the start of the New World and in the West Blue, says Crocus informing him and his crew. Those two young individuals you captured however are hunting Laboon for whale meat for an unknown reason, but from what I can assume is that it's the size of Laboon that could feed a small village for a couple of years, says Crocus informing them on that as Luffy nodded. So that's who they are, huh, says Lily now understanding as she felt something with observation haki and turned to Luffy to speak again. Hey Luffy, where are they exactly, asks Lily. It seems they found a way to escape from their restraints and took this chance to escape themselves away from here, says Luffy as he continued. Don't worry, I already have their scent and aura trail, so we'll go after them, says Luffy assuring her as he looked at Crocus for him to continue. There is a reason behind why he keeps hitting against the Red Line and howling at the Red Line, says Crocus as he ate some of the food from his plate as he continued. He went on to tell them that he was devoted to a certain band of pirates that sailed to explore the Grand Line and how he followed them from West Blue and entered the Grand Line. He told them when they arrived at the Twin Capes, their ship was badly damaged and needed to be repaired, so while staying they spent time with Laboon, but after the repairs were done, they promised they would return for him. It has been like this for 50 years since then, says Crocus with a sad expression as everyone's eyes widen. Don't you think 50 years is a bit too long? I mean that's some time to wait, says Usopp. Idiot, this is the Grand Line. Those pirates who came here are most likely dead, says Zoro coming to his own conclusion. Not a calm way to say it, but it's most likely true. In that time while sailing, those days of the Grand Line were uncharted and dangerous, 1,000 times more than it is now as much has been explored now, says Ju. But don't you think they could still be alive? They have to be considering that most during that time were young, says Usopp. You may be one to believe that, but the reality of it all is cold. Those pirates aren't dead, the truth is they abandoned their quest of this sea. I learned that years before, as they turned tail and left the Grand Line, says Crocus, causing them except Luffy to widen their eyes. That's cruel. What kind of people would rather save themselves instead of keeping a promise to a friend, asks Nojiko angry as the rest nodded. It's on a whole other level of low, says Sanji a bit angry at that. I doubt they abandoned the quest, says Luffy, causing all of them to turn to him. What makes you say that, asks Zoro, wanting to hear why. During that time, yes, it was hard to navigate the Grand Line, but also it harder due to many ships disappearing in what is called the Florian Triangle, says Luffy. The Florian Triangle, asks Nami, curious at this, with a raised eyebrow. Yes, it's a place covered in a fog so thick that it blocks out all sunlight, but it's also a place where many pirate and commercial ships mysteriously went missing every year, and, sometimes, the ship will be found sailing without any people on board, says Luffy as they all started to understand. A few years back, when I was still in Sword with my team, we were ordered by the world government to search the place and explore it as best as we could to understand its entirety. The reason we got out was because of an eternal log pose and my dragon form flying us out. Though when we entered it, there were wrecked ships everywhere, with some being there that looked to be at least 60 years old, says Luffy, shocking them. So you think? Says Nojiko, shocked. Yes, they did disappear, and it's possible that somewhere in that place, it was there that they did. Though I've heard of a certain pirate setting up shop there recently some years ago, and has been causing more disappearances than usual, says Luffy, shocking them further, and making them a bit angry someone would do that. The Florian Triangle isn't just a place where ships disappear and create the mystery behind it, says Ju, beginning as he had finished eating, and continued. The true mystery of that place is an unknown ominous entity. It is so large that it completely dwarfs the world's largest pirate ship, in sheer size, possibly making it the biggest creature in the world. With that said, me, Luffy and the other pillar generals of the Nine fought the damn thing, and frankly speaking, it's not something we hope to do again for fun. That being said, it was also the main reason we left that area in the first place, with the mission marked as a colossal failure, says Ju, shocking them all to their core, even Crocus, as he had heard stories about something like that. Wait, are you saying that this creature is that large? How big are we talking, asks Zoro, wanting to know about that. Somewhere around 54,000 meters in height, says Ju, as they were all now shocked by something that had a size of that magnitude and understood why they don't want to ever fight that thing again. Unbelievable, says Nami, shocked by this with wide eyes. It's not uncommon really, the ocean is an unexplored place. Which is why people say anything can happen on the open ocean, says Zoro, with Ju nodding. Honestly, that place was a living hellhole, says Ju, thinking about it now, with a calm face. Yeah, it's very apparent that Luffy and Ju, along with the other generals that they speak so much about, have lost their sanity to an extent, and along with all their fear of death a while back, and now just accept it all. Thought the crew as they saw this time and time again from the both of them, as Lily just sighed knowing how the two could be. While this happened with their thoughts, Luffy was looking over towards the water and spoke. Have you told him yet? Asks Luffy, never taking his gaze away from the water and whale. I did. That in itself was hard to do in every detail, says Crocus sadly as he continued. That was the day it all began for him doing this. He still believes they're out there and doesn't want to give up on them, that's why he's killing himself like this, says Crocus. Luffy was standing by the water now and froze a wall around Laboon as he then sent a stretched arm punch at the whale, which seemed to anger him. So Laboon jumped from the water and went to attack Luffy. This proved to fail, as Luffy put a quake bubble around his hand and sent a kaishin at Laboon that sent him back in the water hard, along with the ice wall being destroyed. Luffy! What the hell are you doing? Asks Zoro as Laboon came back to attack. As Laboon reached near Luffy, he decided to speak out to the whale. It's a draw, says Luffy, causing Laboon to stop now as he continued. Pretty strong, aren't I? I'm strong as I look, along with more, but I got the measure of you that you already knew that. I could tell you've been waiting for someone to fight with you, since your shipmates most likely used to do the same with you in spars before they left, says Luffy as he continued. Your old crew may be dead, but from now on I'm your rival. We'll fight again someday to decide which of us is the strongest. So once we're done sailing the Grand Line to its end entirely, I'll be back, says Luffy. Then we'll finish our fight, says Luffy, finishing up. A tear formed in Laboon's eye as he howled happily. Crocus looked on with a smile on his face, as this was progress for the whale in 50 years. So Luffy used body flicker to get to the ship and came back with paint. A few minutes later. So now, Luffy had painted the Straw Hat's Jolly Roger on Laboon's head, and it actually looked perfect given he did it in a few minutes. Looks good. It may be rushed, but overall perfect. So don't go bashing your head against the red line or it might smear and come off, says Luffy, telling Laboon as he then walked off back to his crew. Thank you, young man. That was a nice thing to do, says Crocus with a small smile. Well, it's better to see things recover than wallow in pain, says Luffy as he remembered something. Oh right.
I never formally introduced myself with the whole marine secrecy thing, considering you already told us who you are. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, pleased to meet you, says Luffy holding out his hand for Crocus to shake. I'm Crocus, lighthouse keeper of the Twin Capes, as you heard earlier, says Crocus as he shook his hand. Now how is it you know Shanks and Rayleigh, asks Crocus with a smile.
Luffy smiled and replied to answer.
I was a member of Shanks' crew, along with being his apprentice and former 1st Division commander, says Luffy showing him the Jolly Roger as he spoke. They both taught me hockey to an extent with me training myself in some of the extended areas, but I'd train with old man Rayleigh again, any day considering Shanks drinks a lot, says Luffy as Crocus chuckled. It's been some time since I've seen red hair, if I remember correctly it was when he came to East Blue some years ago, says Crocus surprising Luffy as it was true that Shanks did have to come this way to get to East Blue.
Yeah, that was when I first met him.
I didn't officially join them until after I left the world government and Marines and then joined up with my father for some time, says Luffy as he continued further. Though all those times swimming through here on missions or just passing through, I never saw Laboon, says Luffy as June nodded at that too.
Laboon either goes to eat or he was either ramming the red line, says Crocus with Ju and Luffy nodding.
Well, that clears things, says Luffy as he turned to Ju. Ju, I want you to grab Nami and bring her here to understand with Nojiko how the log pose works, it might help with you considering you understand water on a level even I don't, says Luffy.
Yeah, right, says Ju going to get the two as Luffy turned back to Crocus.
Thanks once again, Crocus, says Luffy as the man nodded and spoke. Oh, one more thing, when Red Hair came through here, he said that you might want these things, says Crocus as he threw two things to Luffy for him to catch. The first was some globe of energy that glowed a clear energy and the second was a red gourd bottle that had the kanji for fire, Kasai, on it. Luffy knew the gourd was a gift but knew what this other item was and thanked the old man before he walked off to his crew while strapping the gourd bottle to his waist. Finish up, we're going to be setting sail soon, says Luffy to the crew. Aye, Captain, says the crew as Ju got Nojiko and Nami and brought them over to Crocus to inform them on how to use a log pose. So as that happened, Luffy signaled Usopp to walk with him as he spoke. Usopp, has the rudder been repaired, asks Luffy as everyone else nodded. Yes. It's fixed and ready to go, says Usopp as Luffy nodded and walked off towards the cabin's quarters.
Captain's quarters. Luffy had just gotten done writing in his logbook as he put it away.
So now he was wondering what kind of memory he would see from this now. So he sighed, and touched it as the energy hit him and the world around him went black once again like so many times before.
Memory from 50 years ago.
Luffy found himself overlooking a table of people from one of the wooden beams connected to the roof inside the building. He wondered why he was so high up and just crouched on it a bit as the people under him began to speak. So, they suspect the Marshal D family of being traitors, asks the first man in the room, who could be suspected of being the leader of the Marshal DS, by Luffy's point of view. Yes, they have, due to our advancements in the meetings concerning our advancement into other islands along with adding another race to our ranks, says the second Marshal D, who is reporting to him. It's no secret to them that we want the power, so why are we sitting and waiting to strike the Monkey DS and other royal families to take the power from them entirely, asks the third Marshal D, angry at why they're waiting.
Be silent. You should know it won't be that easy and even then we wouldn't be able to do it.
Not in our generation anyway, says the Marshal D, leader, shocking the others.
Why not?
We have the supporters in numbers and with the growing empire and absorbing of tribes due to our agenda having to forcibly be pushed forth due to votes, we can usurp the Monkey DS.
So why are we waiting, asks the fourth Marshal D, in the room.
It's better to let your enemy have a calm and relaxed attitude as you prepare years later to stab them in the back and take your prize, says the Marshal D, leader with a murderous but calm grin that makes the others understand with their own grin.
I see.
Says the third Marshal D, with a grin. So that's what we'll do, we wait and be loyal but when the time comes to strike them in the back, we'll take what should be ours and more. So for now this meeting is over, says the Marshal D leader as they put out the candles in the meeting place and leave. So after everything is closed up and the room is dark except for moonlight shining in. A man in a hood who was invisible the entire time had listened in on the conversation. This man was the second Monkey D brother who had given his concerns to his older brother leading their family and also the rest of the clan. So now the man sighed and spoke. Well, it looks like my fears were right. I should go and report this to my brother, says the Monkey D, as he turns invisible again and leaves. Luffy is overall shocked by what was said by the men having their meetings to plan that were the careful planning to betray their own clan members and usurp that power of balance for their own greed, but also the fact that one of his ancestors did take the necessary actions to get information like he said he would. It was clear that the Marshal DS were traitors wellsome due to the fact that their family split not wanting to deal with the ones that gave in to their own ambitions instead of following the rest of the clan. So now the whole world went black once more as Luffy heard a voice like before. It was no secret that most of they wanted the power and would do anything to have it though some of the family split away from their actions to enforce a coup d'etat. It was infecting others they came across with their own ideals and allowing their chaos to spread through the clan. Which is why the Shroud of Invisibility is a great tool in the art of being hidden, says the voice as Luffy listened. End memory. Luffy found himself back in the captain's quarters. So after hearing everything he found out from that memory, he was in thought about something he heard from his father. Power is always dangerous, it attracts the worst and corrupts the best. Power is only given to those who are prepared to lower themselves to pick it up. Now I see what Dad meant by that, thought Luffy, remembering his father's words while rubbing his eyes with his right hand to notice something. So it seems I've obtained the powers of the Suk no Mi, but not every one of these small globes give power but information of the past. Though, this power would only help me in situations where I need to stay hidden. So I won't get to use it as much, but I may be able to find a way to add it to my sword style, thought Luffy, raising his right hand as he turned it invisible. As he had this thought about this new power, Ju came in to speak with Luffy about something. He saw the new power that he had and nodded with a smirk. What is it, Ju? Asks Luffy, being calm but small smile on his face. Ju became serious now and spoke. It's about that mission we had when we were in Sword, the personal one you assigned us, asks Ju as Luffy nodded, and he continued. Considering we never found the fruit, can we assume that someone has eaten it, asks Ju. Luffy was thinking for a few seconds as he sighed and calmly stood up and spoke. Yes, we can assume that someone has eaten it, but I've also obtained it myself from one of the globes I got back at Kokoyashi village. Specifically, the one with black energy that for some reason it has an attachment to my crescent moonmark seal on my left palm along with my second katana, says Luffy, shocking Ju. What you mean you have? Says Ju, now understanding. Yes. Not only did it separate my dragon abilities and phoenix abilities, though I can mix them, but I have it, says Luffy, raising his left hand to show that he had the powers of the 9 demonic pillar generals, greatest objective of the team. The Yami Yami no Mi. Ju was so shocked that he had sat down in a chair to breathe for a moment to get his mind together as he then sighed and then spoke again to Luffy. So we partially did complete the mission in finding it, but the fruit is still out there, says Ju, making his comment on this. Yes. So whoever has it can become a great threat due to what I told you and other generals about this fruit's powers and abilities that I read from some old archives in the clan that froze me to my core. It's completely dangerous in the right person's hands, says Luffy, putting away some things in his office. So what do we exactly do when facing the person who has it, asks Ju, looking for guidance. I don't know, but if it comes down to it, we must fight. No question. Though tracking and hunting this person will throw us off in our journey. Which is why I and the rest of the crew did not set sail for this, but to achieve our dreams and find the One Piece. Like I said, if they become a threat then we fight, says Luffy as he turned to Ju, who nodded and spoke again. Now come on, we need to plot a course for our escaped prisoners, says Luffy as he and Ju went to leave the room. Outside. As Luffy and Ju exited the captain's quarters, they both heard commotion over the side of the ship. So they decided to see what was going on and walked over to see that the two people trying to hunt Laboon were on their knees in front of the crew. What's going on? I thought these two left, says Luffy, coming over with a calm voice as he got their attention. These two apparently are here to ask us for a ride to some place called Whiskey Peak, says Zoro, reporting, which caused Luffy to perk up at this when he heard the place. I see. It's the next island on our course as we make our way into the Grand Line. Though, I wonder why they came and asked us, says Luffy, looking at the two before he spoke. Throw them off the ship and let's leave. They can swim back. Nami, get to navigating and Usopp man the rudder, says Luffy, turning to walk away as they nodded and went off. Please wait, says the man, yelling and causing Luffy to look at him. Our ship was destroyed and we have no other way to return back, says the man. And why is it any concern to me? You really should have thought about that before hunting Laboon, says Luffy as he jumped up to sit on the railing of the tip deck as he turned his head a bit to ask Nami a question. Am I correct that we're going there anyway, asks Luffy with a sigh. Yes, our heading is Whiskey Peak, says Nami as he sighed and rubbed his forehead in a bit of irritation as the hunters perked up. What are you idiots getting excited for? I didn't say I was taking you to. Just who the hell are you anyway? And what is it you exactly do? Considering you don't look like whale hunters, says Luffy, taking the time to look at what they wore as it became apparent to the rest that he was right. We can't tell you that, the woman said, causing Luffy to narrow his eyes along with the rest of the crew. So you expect us to take you back to this place but won't give us a damn name, asks Zoro, finding these two even more suspicious now. It's the mystery of the company we work for to not give out our names. Though you can call me Mr. Nine and her Ms. Wednesday, says the man, identifying themselves by what seemed like code names. Luffy sighed a bit and decided to speak. Let's say I help you, what's in it for me and my crew, asks Luffy while looking at them as he tried to figure out where he heard these code names before, like Ju and Zoro were doing. We have gold, money, and alcohol, says Mr. Nine, causing Nami to become excited and giddy that made Nojiko sweat drop at Zoro heard boos and got interested. Luffy had to smile just a bit even though it was apparent that these two had something else in mind by the scent of emotions and aura they gave off. Fine, we'll take you but try anything and we throw you overboard, says Luffy, causing them to get excited and nod their heads. Luffy looked over to Zoro and Ju and gave them a silent signal to watch them as he knew they found the two very suspicious. So they gave him a small nod of the head back to their captain. Alright, everything is put away so let's set sail, says Luffy, causing everyone to move into high gear to set off for their next destination, but before they left, Luffy went over to the railing and spoke. You take care of yourself, Crocus and Laboon. It will be some time before we see each other again. If I see Old Man Rayleigh or hear from Shanks, I'll tell them I saw you, says Luffy as Crocus nodded his head. And you say hello to them for me when it comes, says Crocus. Will do, says Luffy as he walked back to the other side of the ship to give out orders. Zoro, Lily, tie those two up to the mast for me, says Luffy, pointing to their guests. The two of them were shocked when Zoro and Lily began tying them to the mast, but Luffy paid no mind to their shocked faces and ignored it. The course is set, Luffy, says Nami, informing her captain as she stood near him. Luffy nodded and spoke to give orders to the rest of the crew. All right, people. Ju, raise the anchor. Usopp's already at the rudder, so Zoro, Lily, and Nojiko release the sails. Let's get out of here, says Luffy, yelling out his orders. Aye, Captain, says everyone, getting a move on. Ju, once done, keep an eye on those two. You, me and Zoro along with Usopp will be doing rotations to watch them, says Ju, nodding. Alright, let's get this business done with Whiskey Peak and move on, thought Luffy as he walked to sit on the figurehead of the Going Merry as the ship sailed for the next destination. Tato Land, New World. In Tato Land now, the children of Big Mom all reconvened after a few hours to let Tamago get information on Luffy. So while waiting for the rest older children of Big Mom to arrive back in the room, the middle children of Big Mom told the younger ones about how Luffy was connected to the family. As they now understood why the older siblings were all so shocked about it and reacted the way they did. So now, Tamago had the projector transponder snail start the projection as he had papers to read from with the information that he was able to get on the projector. So Tamago, what were you able to find, asks Big Mom, wanting to know what her subordinate was able to find out about Luffy, with her family hoping to get a read on his abilities and what he should be able to do so far. Tamago was about to speak but saw Smoothie's glare that made the man freeze up and sweat a bit as she spoke now. Well. Tell me, says Smoothie, glaring at Tamago. Patience, Smoothie. He was just about to start the clips and speak, says Katakuri, trying to calm his sister, considering she had been like this since finding out he was alive, though Katakuri was like this too as he did fight his nephew and wondered how he didn't recognize him. Well, I had to push our contacts and spies just a bit harder to get the information, says Tamago, pressing a button to show the first slide, which was a picture. The first slide was of a picture. It showed a 12-year-old Luffy of when he was still a part of the Marines as the leader of the 9 demonic pillar generals. He was standing in front of the rest of his fellow companions, with his mask placed on the side of his head instead of his face, as most of his hair was still black with white coming in. He was wearing a white, sleeveless coat adorned by a batch of X-shaped buttons from all around the high collar, black lining on the coat, a dark red color on the inside, and a coat's tail. He also had black pants with matching colored boots. Luffy during this time also wielded a large, yet sleek sword before getting the two that he wields presently. And, think of 10 Commandment Meliodas. So with this seen by the family, someone decided to ask a question. When was this picture taken, asks Montour, curious while seeing the picture. Tamago looks at his papers and begins to speak. This picture was taken when Luffy was 12 years old. Apparently, the reports say that his reputation led him to be feared by the enemies of the Marines, with even the admirals acknowledging his power as the Pillar General of Wrath, says Tamago, informing them of that. Wrath, asks Katakuri, wondering why his nephew had that title still. Yes, despite this title, he maintains a calm personality, but if angered for a good reason or his friends are harmed in any way, he's shown to be capable of extreme anger. As during his time with the Marines, he was very brutal towards his enemies in battle, says Tamago to Katakuri. I see, says Katakuri, satisfied with the answer while letting the man continue. So now, let's move on to the next slide, says Tamago, pressing the button to show a slide of information. Sword classified personnel registry and Cipher Pole Surveillance Division. Name, Monkey D. Luffy. Birthday, May 5th. Age, 17. Height, 178 centimeters. Blood type, F. IQ, 198. Birthplace, New World, unknown. Raised in Goa Kingdom, East Blue. So he was raised in East Blue, eh? Pretty strong for a pirate raised in the weakest sea, says Cracker, seeing that the East Blue hasn't made Luffy soft in the slightest as Big Mom got a grin. Of course he is. He's New World born and a Charlotte, even more he's Smoothie's son. And Smoothie is one of the strongest of my girls, says Big Mom about her daughter as Smoothie blush with a smile at the praise due to her mother rarely giving it. Well, it seems he gets his smarts from his mother, says Cinnamon with a smile towards Smoothie, who smiled back. The next segment is about his family, for which I got more information on his father that Cypher Pole seems to not want public, says Tamago hitting the next slide. Family. Name unknown, mother. Name unknown, grandmother. Monkey D. Dragon, father, leader of the Revolutionary Army. Suru, grandmother, vice admiral, the great staff officer. Monkey D. Garp, grandfather, vice admiral, the hero of the Marines. Monkey D. Kong, great-grandfather, former fleet admiral, promoted to current world government commander-in-chief. So when they read all of this, they did expect some things to be left as unknown, but that fact that the surveillance file on Luffy was able to find out who his father was to his entirety, as the man was an enigma in himself when he appeared in Totoland, so this came as both surprising and impressive. That and it was pretty shocking to them that Luffy's great-grandfather was the former fleet admiral, as Big Mom remembered the guy from her younger days. Well, this just gets better and better, says Katakuri, being a bit sarcastic as he found this information to be a surprise to him about the background of his nephew's father's side of the family. And being related to Kong, there's a surprise, says Big Mom, remembering the man did lead the Marines at the time before Sengoku took the spot. So now, Big Mom signaled him to continue. He also has two adoptive brothers that are older than him, and that were raised alongside him in East Blue. The first being 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates Fire Fist Ace, and Sabo, who acts as his vice, says Tamago, shocking them. Are you serious? Asks Smoothie, making sure she heard that right. Yes, and there's more concerning his Marine record, which I'll bring up now, says Tamago, bringing up the next slide for them to see and become shocked. Marine record. Registered, enlisted, and tested when he came into the Marines at the age of 8 per Monkey D. Garp's orders, with Luffy's goal to become king of the pirates. Result was him entering into Cypher Pole. Worked his way from CP9 up to CP0 at the age of 9 while becoming a member of Sword that watches Yonko activity. Result was Luffy being the youngest and only member to enter at the age of 9. Outcome, the 5 elders officially giving him permission to form his own team. Formed a deadly group of 9 after finding the 8 others across the world, with the group later being known as the 9 demonic pillar generals within 3 months due to the overwhelming strength they possessed, with Luffy being the strongest of them. Made Sword captain at the age of 9, a month after his squad was assembled. Made commander and director of both Sword and Cypher Pole at age 10. Led both divisions very well until his departure for his crimes at the age of 13. So when reading this, it became apparent that Luffy was far ahead in terms of battle experience to achieve this. Katakuri did say that Luffy was able to match him in terms of seeing into the future with haki and escaping the battle alive. Though, it was shocking to them at the speed of his growth. The question that did run through their minds was of what made him come this far, and how hard was Luffy fighting to gain the spot. Wait, he was made a captain at the age of 9, and led both divisions at the age of 10 until he was 13? How is that possible? Asks Compote, shocked that her nephew could pull off something like this. Yes, the reports say that Luffy's thought process was well above what was expected of his age, which Cypher Pole assumed was due to the harsh experiences he faced as a child, says Tamago, informing them of this. Notable feats and crimes. Feats. Survived a buster call at age 3. Killed his first person at the age 4. Completed over 1,386 missions assigned to him in the 6 years after being enlisted, with many being with his team. 2 SSS rank, 40 SS rank, 117 SS rank, 430 A rank, 325 B rank, 250 C rank, 222 D rank. Fought the Beast Pirates All-Star, Jack the Drought, with a 1 billion berry bounty and effectively beat him while still in Sword by age 10. Outcome, Luffy won with Jack receiving heavy injuries. Fought Kaido at the age of 9 to protect an island he was stationed to guard in what would be known as the Ice Dragon Festival due to the use of Luffy's ice affinity in the battle and taking his dragon form also. Outcome, Luffy being extremely injured near death's door, and survived the battle from speculation of Garp's training he received. Injuries, received a light scar on the left side jaw extending down to the left side of his neck. Fought the Big Mom Pirate Suite commander, Charlotte Katakuri, at the age of 12 in a sea battle in the New World. Outcome, battle was never finished with a determined winner due to the fight's intensity while receiving scars from the injuries. Injuries, scars along his front torso, a slash scar across the stomach from a trident spear attack, a curved stab scar a few inches away from his heart as the rest of his scars appear all across his abs. Killed off the 7 major drug-producing organizations of the underworld, effectively destroying their power and making them either be imprisoned and impelled down or go into hiding by age 13. Outcome, gave rise to Drug Peklo, becoming an emperor of the underworld. Became known as the god of the pleasure district and god of pleasure through unknown methods. Was a possible candidate for being the 4th Marine Admiral,
and possible front-running fleet admiral candidate during his service. So now it was even more shocking to them, from the Buster Call to his entire life leading up to being a pirate. Smoothie had tears in her eyes once more while covering her mouth at the fact that her baby had to endure the horrors of a Buster Call, as most people knew what it entailed, the utter destruction and eradication of something the world government wanted gone. He fought Kaido, asks Big Mom more so to herself as she wondered how much in strength did Luffy take after her, though she did wonder how he fared. And to survive that creature. Says Cracker, having respect for his nephew even more now, knowing that he decided to fight with a creature such as Kaido while fully knowing he could lose. It's like he's endured every hell possible, says Ubin, reading this, being a bit shocked himself. Possible candidate for Fleet Admiral. Says Parasparrow, shocked by that information being in his file, wondering if the Marines held him in that regard. Now that in itself is an even greater surprise, says Parasparrow's younger sister, Charlotte Broy, who was also shocked by the fact that the Marines had him as a candidate for such a position. Luffy, says Smoothie, as she felt even more guilty for not being there for him. Along with finding out that Luffy fought Kaido, for which it was reported afterwards that he could have died along with his battle against her older brother, Katakuri. So now, she turned to him and spoke. Katakuri, says Smoothie, going a bit from sad to angry now reading all of it. I apologize, says Katakuri, being very serious and sincere while knowing that he could have killed his own nephew. While he said this to Smoothie, her sister Bruley came over to comfort her, as she knew this must be hard on her to know this kind of information. It became clear that Luffy had to endure a lot at a young age, and still seemed to find his way to move past it. Though for Smoothie, she knew that it couldn't have been easy, but she also found it necessary to know more about him as a whole just to understand her son. He survived a Buster Call as well? What kind of hell has he exactly had to endure? Asks Colette, now concerned by this, with a surprised expression on her face, as Luffy had to really have a strong will to continue from such an experience, but it also made her sad that he probably was so scared at the time. So young and has experienced so much. Says Amanda, a bit sad at this herself. Yes, very much so, says Big Mom, signaling Tamago to continue. With this in mind, I'll move on to the next slide, says Tamago, hitting the button to do that. Crimes. Killed Celestial Dragon, Saint Jelmac. Motive was theorized to be for the attempted murder of his brother Sabo. Killed a 1,000 celestial dragons from the branch family of the Monkey D clan that split after the Void Century, in the official first half of the incident being marked as the Celestial Monkey D downfall for the massacre. Outcome, entire branch family of the clan being entirely wiped out in one night. Putting the whole family down to 4 members, all of which are a part of the main family including Luffy. This wasn't figured out until a month later when the second half of the incident occurred. Stole top secret and classified information the night before the day of his departure from the Marines and world government for his crimes. Outcome, has classified information on Marine cover-ups, cipher pole operations, O'Hara, Flevance, and Yonko information along with notes on Haki. Has extensive knowledge on the Rocks Pirates and the God Valley incident, which lead to Garp becoming the hero of the Marines, as this information is speculated to have come from Garp himself. Destroyed the entire island nation of Canable in the New World at age 11, when his devil fruit took over, with the overwhelming rage being able to destroy the entire island. Motive, unclear, highly suspected that he was overcome by deep sorrow and rage. Responsible for burning most of the Holy Land of Mariewa, which was marked as the second half of the incident known as Hot Friday, with the help of the other generals while escaping. Outcome, due to the utter destruction and chaos that occurred, the entire incident from the first and second pieces of the incident officially being marked as an unspeakable crime. Forcing the Marines to create level 7 of Impel Down. Responsible for burning a large Marine base in the New World that was responsible for ship repairs. Outcome, Hawkeye Mihawk intervening to push back this advance, forcing Luffy to retreat. This came as a shock to all of them, even for Big Mom, considering her past with her former crew. The killing of celestial dragons was not something that even pirates would go and do considering the punishment, but Luffy killed 1,000 of them, all sharing his same name. For Smoothie, this information had shocked her to her very core at the fact that Luffy would do something like this, along with wondering what could have been the motive behind this in the first place. He burned down Mariewa? Asks Oven, a bit pale at this revelation that Luffy would be crazy enough to do that. Even before that, taking the steps to kill celestial dragons, with that in itself making anyone an international criminal, says Custard, equally shocked, wondering why her nephew would do something like this. Though I'm wondering myself why he wasn't, says Katakuri, with his eyes going back to normal from being a bit wide at this information. It's speculated that the top officials of the world government want to handle this quietly and not cause a panic. As the file reads that he has enough information to damage the Marines' reputation, says Tamago as he continued. Though the motive was speculated to stop a mission assigned to him, and the other generals called Operation Firestorm, as the details are all blacked out or redacted entirely, says Tamago as he continued further. Another piece was that he threatened the 5 top officials of the world government by saying that if the operation were to move forward even after they left the Marines, he would start leaking everything to the public along with information to unaligned nations, says Tamago, shocking them at that. What did the operation possibly entail to cause that? Says Daifuku to himself, wondering what could have been so bad to force such an outcome. Now as for his abilities, says Tamago, showing the next slide. Abilities. While being an extensive threat to the world government, he is shown to be a skilled swordsman to match the strongest swordsman in the world with his own 2 MIModel class swords. Known to be skilled in hand-to-hand combat with melee weapons and ranged weapons. Deadly skilled marksman. Has the world's strongest devil fruit known as the Hito no MIModel, Asura. This fruit feeds off the anger the user gives off and makes them stronger the angrier they get, along with the property to use other devil fruits when the fruit absorbs devil fruit energy from others. Is able to use Conqueror's Haki, Observation Haki, and Armament Haki and then some. Along with a final class of Haki known as Divine Haki. This came as a surprise to family for his skills. It was rare for a conqueror to be seen in terms of Haki, as the Big Mom and Katakuri were the only ones to use it, so Smoothie's son was in terms of power very blessed and skilled. For Amanda, the one thing that caught her eye was the swordsman piece. Is this true? About him being able to match the world's strongest swordsman, asks Amanda, curious at that. Yes, from the reports of his fight in East Blue before entering the Grand Line, Mihawk appeared and fought his first mate and then fought Luffy. The outcome of the battle was a draw, along with Luffy cracking the tip of Hawkeye's sword, says Tamago, shocking her and everyone else. It was very clear to their family that Amanda wanted to one day face Mihawk, though hearing her nephew was able to face against the man in a duel which ended in a draw along with cracking the sword. So it piqued her interest further in wanting to have a duel with him one day, but what nobody noticed was the small smile she had. So Big Mom decided to speak now. Tamago, what does it mean this devil fruit he has can absorb other properties? And what's Divine Haki? I've never heard of it, says Big Mom. Apparently his devil fruit can absorb other devil fruit energy to use the powers of another fruit, which can in turn give the user multiple devil fruit abilities without eating a second one, which kills the person upon doing so, says Tamago, shocking her and the rest of them. Recent reports say he can use the abilities Gura Gura no Mi, which is in the possession of Whitebeard, says Tamago, shocking them all even more. That's incredible, says Galette, hearing that there was such a devil fruit. As for Divine Haki, I have no information on it, considering this in itself was a mystery, as the only information on it is that it's extremely rare, more so than Conqueror's Haki, says Tamago. I see, says Big Mom, satisfied but wanting to know. Another thing about his abilities is that due to being AD, their blood possess a trait to pass on traits of other races if they mix with the bloodline. As DS are known to have an ancestor from every race held with inside them, says Tamago, shocking them and making Big Mom giddy at this, as was part of her dream to have every race in Totoland. This was proven when Luffy was reported to be able to breathe underwater and also find a way around the weakness of devil fruits, says Tamago, shocking them again, but mainly Praline as she spoke. Wait, so he has fishmen and merfolk ancestors, asks Praline, hopeful at that. Yes, says Tamago, as she got a smile from this information, with him continuing. This is the end of everything I was able to retrieve on the report, but I was also able to grab from our spies some pictures from his younger years leading up to recently, says Tamago, with Smoothie perking up at this. Gimme, says Smoothie, wanting to see them. Tamago came over and gave her the pictures, with some of the family wanting to see as well. As Smoothie noticed from his pictures that seemed to start at age 3 that his hair over the years continued to turn white. So with every picture there was a smiling Luffy with his other generals to his 2 brothers, or with Garp, or him being by himself. These pictures were most likely copies that Garp took to have himself, as those looking found it cute. He truly has grown up, says Bruley, seeing the pictures with a fond smile. So cute, says Citron, seeing the pictures of her nephew over the years, as he did manage to keep his happy attitude, which she was thankful for. It seems his hair has turned more white over the years, says Amanda with a small smile towards her sister. I just can't wait to see him, says Smoothie with a tearful smile. Yes, though I wonder what made him become a pirate, asks Katakuri, wondering that. That was due to Red Hair Shanks visiting the East Blue around when Luffy was 7 years old, while inspiring him to go to sea. This was also proven by the fact that he is the former 1st Division commander of the Red Hair Pirates, but I was also able to find out that he was the former chief of staff for the Revolutionary Army as well, says Tamago. Mama. This grandson of mine seems to have an extensive background, says Big Mom with a smile and a thought of how he would be when reaching the new world. Smoothie was a proud mother of her child and couldn't wait to meet him. Though for her she was worried when it came to her mother, as she knew how she could get. It was becoming easier for Smoothie but complicated due to what could happen in the future. Nighttime, Grand Line. Luffy was currently awake, sitting outside on the main deck as everyone else was sound asleep. They all enjoyed a pretty good dinner from the fish Sanji one in Lode Town and were officially getting some rest from their long day.
So as he was awake, he looked at the sky and noticed the change in wind pattern and speed. He also noticed Ju came up to where he was while proving he himself was awake as well. "You feel it too?" asks Luffy to Ju. "Yes," says Ju as he turned to Luffy. "Do you think it's?" says Ju. "No doubt, but we'll see soon enough," says Luffy, walking back to get some sleep himself as he wondered about the change in wind pattern on this night. And that will be the end of this part. This took a lot of time to make, so I hope you enjoyed. Only 23.1% of people who watches these videos are actually subscribed, so please hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you will never miss a video. Stay tuned for the next part. Goodbye.